of centralized management and control plane, where SD-WAN is one of the implementations of that. Programmable networks is one aspect of it, of SD-WAN. It's not necessarily the only aspect. The thing that SD-WAN or SDN allows you, because now you have a centralized controller, you have the ability to have APIs that allow you to write programs that interact with that controller rather than with each and every device that's out there. All right? Absolutely. That was all, whether it's Telnet, SSH, SNMP, that is all management plane. Absolutely correct. Other components of the same thing, of SDN, you might see around SD access. This is for the WAN aspect of things. SD access is for your campus network. Another product that Cisco also has for the SDN component is ACI. This is used in conjunction with data centers. So all of these are really what? Part of the family called SDN. SD-WAN for WAN, SD access for campus networks, ACI for data centers. And each one of them has their own controllers. For example, over here, you have a controller, centralized controller called the DNAC. Although it works with ICE, but the main thing is the DNAC. That goes again on the management, the orchestration plane, where it allows you to have enhanced capabilities. But overall, these are the main objectives that you have for that. ACI has the APIC. All right. And then you have SD-WAN for the wide area network. No, APIs would mostly occur in your management plane to push the configuration onto your management plane, and the management plane then will push it into your control plane. They affect the control plane, but APIs will be written to communicate to your, your management plane. Some part of it, Rush. Not the entire thing, because your control plane is still maintained by, you have a big portion of the control plane managed by your, the spine switches. Although they are in the data plane as well. So the data plane over there, the control and data plane have the same, it's the same device. Here it's completely segregated. SD-WAN, we have not one, you have three different controllers, three main controllers over here. And we'll talk about those controllers in detail today. You guys understand the concept of what this is all about. It's all about being able to configure devices from a central location and be able to actually manage the entire thing from a central location. And the irony is, if you take a look at the state of the world today, the entire world is locked down. Now, if you want to be able to control or configure a particular device on a particular location, SD-WAN, you'll see how easy it is for me to take a look at each one of those locations and be able to configure that remotely. Not only be able to configure it, also simulates flows to see how the flows are going on a particular device. The tools that it provides you through the vManage, the management device called vManage, are tremendous in terms of allowing you the ability to troubleshoot, monitor your network from a centralized location. So this is where the advantage of SD-WAN comes in. And SD-WAN is basically built for a situation that we're in right now, where you want to do everything from a central location without having to deploy too many resources down to the edge level and be able to control the remote sites. You get my point, guys? So again, as I said, it's centralized control. So this gives you a lot more access over there. Good so far, guys? All right, perfect. So we now have looked at the overall picture. Yeah? Now let's take a look at what we're going to take a look at in terms of SD-WAN. I'm going to show you what SD-WAN components are, what is the job of each and every component, some specifics about SD-WAN in terms of how does it work internally. I'll talk about the the controllers individually. I'll talk about the V edges or the C edges. These are your data plane devices. These are your control plane, management plane devices. Now, this is where you really start seeing the advantage of SD-WAN. Let's say I have this site that I want to configure. This is one of the labs that we'll be doing in the class later on. Let's say this is the site that I want to be able to configure. What I need to do is I need to initialize, and in some cases this device, which is my edge device, can be initialized completely with zero touch, means no configuration whatsoever. But even if it's not zero touch, very minimum configuration is required on this device, in which it would register through either the MPLS cloud or through the internet to the vManager. I'll show you the process of doing that. Once it registers on the vManager, just by basic initial configuration, on vManager or vManage, I can create templates for this particular device or this type of device, in which I would not only configure this interface, this internal interface that you have, and or any other routing protocol or any other policies using a template, and push that template to these devices. Once that template is good over here, I can reuse the same template and apply that same template to these devices over here. So what I can do is have a single template, which basically has the configuration of all my V edges. One V edge is registered. I can reuse the same template on the other V edges and get the site up and running in a matter of minutes. Literally in a matter of minutes, your whole website, or not website, sorry, your remote site is going to be set up. Rather than going and configuring them, because I have the template already, I have the ability using that template, reusing the template that I've created over here, and deploying that template onto each one of those devices. So no telnetting in, no SSHing in into any of the devices. Let's say I want to make a change that is global. I can again go into the template, make the changes over here, and the changes would be applied to all the different devices that fall under that template. So the centralized configuration of your devices from the vManage is one of the biggest aspects, the biggest advantage that you have for setting up SD-WAN. So by doing these templates on vManage, I have the ability to push that change to all these devices. Let me show you an example of that. I have a pre-created setup, and this is something that you will do by the end of the class. This is one of the last labs that we'll do, where we'll set the entire thing that you guys are seeing over here based on templates. I have this up and running over here. My devices are communicating to each other. My routes are getting exchanged. So if you see site 2, I have 21, 22, 23 as my sites. Site 1 has these routes. If I go to this router over here, I'll telnet into the router. This is the internal router. This is not the management part of it. So take a look at the routes, and I see some routes over here. They're communicating to the other side through this particular device. So my pings are working, my devices are working, everything is up and running over here. So I should be able to ping, let's say 11.1. I'm on router 2, which is this guy, and I'm trying to ping this interface. So my whole setup is done right now. Okay. Now, my objective is not to show you that. I just want you guys to see that I have an operational network right now, and it's going to go through setting up the topology. And once it sets the topology up, it starts pinging. It sets up an IPsec tunnel, by the way, automatically between the two sites. And now I'm communicating between R2 and R1. R1 is the one that has the 11.1 network. Now, the advantage that what I want you guys to see over here is once this is set up, let's say it's a completely working environment. What I can do now is, if I want to, I can go over here, pull up the template that I created to set that device up. All right. And let's say these are my different templates that I've assigned. This is the template I've assigned to branch 4. This is the template that I assigned to branch 1 devices, branch 1 device, has two different edges. I've assigned different templates for that because they require different characteristics. Let's do something for batch 1 devices, which is 2 devices. So what I can do over here is I can go into the template and edit. Once I go into the edit over here, just to give you an example of the flexibility that you have over here in terms of configuring it. Let's say I want them to have some banners. I don't have any banners set up right now on them. So over here under the additional templates, I don't have a banner set, so I can choose a banner. I don't have a banner. So I'll create a banner. I'll create a template for the banner for these devices. This is, let's say, branch edge 1. So I can create a VR1 banner template, VR1 banner. You need to specify a description and specify a banner. I can either do a device specific if I want to, or I can do it globally. So I'll do a global banner. Over here, I'll say authorized users only. All right. So once I set that, and over here, I'll do the same thing. Hi there. This is the message of the day banner. This comes before logging in. This comes after logging in. Once I'm done with the banner, I'll save it. And this is just a small part of it, but I want you guys to get a feel of it in terms of where we're leading up to. So I go and create this banner on this particular, I'm doing it on vManage, and I'll update it. It will know that this banner has been applied to specific devices. So it knows there's an update that took place to this particular device. It needs to go ahead and update it on the different devices. So it's going to load it up and it's going to show you the devices that are affected with it, and it's going to push that configuration to all those devices. Give it a second. So these are the 2 devices. VH1, VH2 are the ones that are using this particular template. Click on next. It can show you the changes that you're making, the actual changes that are going to be done on the device. You can see them over here. I can click on it. It'll show you the actual configuration that is down, actually generated, and it's going to deploy it over here. Give it a second. For global, that would be for all devices? No, global would be all devices that are under that template. So the global is for all devices within the template. When you do device specific, it would be for any device that is specific to that template. I'll show you that. We'll get into the specifics of how the templates work in terms of what global is versus device specific. But to answer your question right now, global means all the devices that fall under the template. Now, this is the configuration that you're going to be pushing down. But more importantly, because it knows what the existing configuration was, if you go down over here, it'll show you the actual changes that you're making in the green. And the last but not the least, you configure the devices and push the change down. It says, do you want to confirm that you're putting the changes to 2 devices? I'll say yes. Click OK. And it will show you that it's scheduled it and immediately push it down. Let's just refresh it. It's in progress to send the changes to those 2 devices. Now, over here, I just did it for 2 devices. If I had the same template deployed to 10 devices because the devices were the same, guess what? You would get the changes done on all those devices. Let's take a look at those changes that have taken place. Let's see if it's done first. Checking and creating the templates over here. In the meantime, what I'll do is that I will template into those 2 devices, VH1 and VH2, just to show you the implementation of that template. Let's refresh, pushing the configuration to the device. It's a little faster. It goes slow when I'm running Zoom. Zoom does take a bit or takes a load on the device. So if I'm doing it without Zoom, it's a little quicker. So pre-checks have been fast. Continuing with the pushing of the configuration changes to the device. Once it's done, you're going to see a success over here. There you go. One is done. So I can go and check on VH2 and see if that change has taken place. See this? This is just a simple example of it. And when I log in, you'll see that message of the day also over here. Now, this is just a simple example of what you have the ability to do. Over here, that is done centrally. What the hell was that? Everybody okay with this? You guys understand that? Do you add the template to the devices or devices to the template? You create the template and you apply the templates to the devices. You attach the devices to the template. Got it? Now, the other thing. Now, at this point, let's say I want to figure out how the traffic is getting routed. Let's go to Edge 1 and see if, let's say, if I was sitting on Edge 1, how is the traffic getting routed if I want to go to, let's say, this network over here, 21. Sitting centrally, I have the ability to go in onto my vManage, and from vManage, I have the ability to check how a particular device is working. So I'll go to monitor, go to network, and I'll pick on VH1. VH1, by the way, in my network over here is this device, the one that I just set the banner on. On this device, I want to see if I'm going to a particular device, what is the flow? What is the flow of traffic through my network? Let's take a look. From a central location, I can do that. This device, I did not bring it up because it's the CSR 1000 It takes a lot of resources, so I kept it down. It's also working. Absolutely okay with this. So I'll go to VH1 to see, and I'm sitting in the data center. I'm sitting in the cloud, connecting to the vManage in the cloud. I want to see how my traffic is getting routed from one site to the other site. So I have the ability to simulate flows. And I am, at this point, sitting on this device over here. You get my point. So over here, I'll say I want to go through this VPN that I have. Source interface is going to be my inside interface. So I'm basically simulating is as if, not this one, this guy over here, as if I'm sitting on this network over here, and I want to ping, let's say, 21 network. So I want to simulate the flow from Dubai to this site in London. What are the different paths that I can take if I have multiple flows going from Dubai to London? Let's take a look. So I'm saying ping, this is the source IP on the 10 network, and the destination IP happens to be 192.172.16.21.1. Now I'm going to do a normal ping. By default, it uses ping as a protocol to simulate. Protocol 1 is ICMP. And you'll notice it is going and taking what? 4 different paths to get there. Why 4 paths? Let me explain that. Look at this diagram from a perspective of the 10 network. Now, if you're sitting on the 10 network, what are your exit points over here, guys? Help me out. What are the exit points that you have on this 10 network? You have VH1 and VH2, right? No, internet and MPLS comes later, Cream. From his perspective, his first exit point, multiple sites or multiple devices are these two, right? So it gets to VH1 or VH2, and from VH1, it has 2 different ways, right? Internet and through, this is through the internet, 2 different paths, right? And from here, I have 2 paths. The thing that I haven't shown you guys or you don't understand over here, see this link that you guys see is also a connection for VH4 to the MPLS. So even VH4 is using VH3 to get to the MPLS. So technically I have a link like that. So now from here, I have 4 different paths to get to the other side. So that's what it's showing you over here. that from VH1, I have 4 different ways to get there. What are the 4 ways? Let me show you that. VH1 has this way, going out, going like this. VH1 over here has this way, going out, going over here. So those are 2 ways. But then I also have the MPLS. So I have MPLS going this way, and I have MPLS going this way. You see that? So those are your 4 different ways of connecting up from one side to the other side. Now, I didn't need to go to Dubai to set that up. I could check the way I'm going to this particular address from this particular location. Good so far, guys? Now, the advantage that you have over here is if you want, you have the ability, and again, centrally done, and I'll show you this. This is one of the things that you will see in the class, is if you want, let's say load balancing is not always good all the time, because what's happening over here is I am utilizing an internet connection to go to the other site. Agreed? Internet might not be giving you the same throughput that this MPLS link is giving you the ability to do. So you might have certain traffic, certain application, and you can do that classification based on things like what is known as deep packet inspection. You can actually tell it, hey, listen, if it's traffic for a particular web application, and it's a custom web application, or it's a application that you know, you have the ability to tell it, hey, listen, for this particular traffic going over here, I want you to use only one path, but that one path is guaranteed to give me a certain amount of bandwidth. So you have the ability, not based on networks, you have the ability based on application to traffic engineer the traffic to go over a particular link. And again, all that policy will be done where? That policy will be configured and implemented on the vManage, and that traffic will be propagated based on the policy that you've configured over here, and that traffic for Dubai to London, for that particular type of traffic will go through you. And if you want that policy to be implemented for London to Dubai, you have the ability to use the same policy and say, okay, the same policy that I created, I want that to be from Dubai to London, and I want the same policy to be used when I go from Dubai to Sydney. In one point and click, I can apply this policy to multiple devices without having to do anything to do with Dubai, London, or Sydney, having to go there, tell it into those devices. I create the policy on a central location and push this policy onto all my VHs in one shot. So tremendous amount of scalability is what you get with that. All right. And those are 2 critical aspects of this whole thing that we're going to be taking a look at. Number 1 is the ability to configure these devices from templates centrally. And number 2, to be able to configure or control policy, basically application, or for that matter, control policy, routing policy from a centralized location. All those policies will be done from vManage. Where's the 10 network? That's the network over here, Jesse, between the V edges and the site, the router. For that, it's very simple to do. There's no rollback per se. You can go in and uncheck it. So if you've applied a change and you don't want that policy to be done, you just uncheck that application or apply the old one without. So it's basically on a page where you have different policies and you want to apply the policy, click on it. If you don't want to apply it, let's say it didn't work, take it off. All right, everybody okay with that? So that's what you're going to be learning over here. This is a setup. This is our final lab that we're going to be doing, where we'll set the whole thing up based on this. But before we get into this part of it, I want to start you guys off slowly, where we do a simple setup where we have, again, our setup, our controllers, our V-edges, but not do multiple V-edges on a site. We'll do it based on a single site. You absolutely can, because these are all software-based. You have the ability to install them as VMs. You have the ability to put the cloud, the edge, as a service inside your SaaS. You can do it in the cloud. You can do it in your, actually, there was an article by Cisco that they're working with G Cloud, the Google cloud platform, so that they can manage the internals of your cloud as well from there. So a lot of different integrations that you can do with that. Well, the fat finger can be reversed. That's a good thing. And that fat finger can roll the entire thing down. Are there any physical devices from the above topology? Now, that's a good question. These devices, the controllers, are definitely your VMs. So there's nothing over there. This I'm simulating as the internet on my topology. This is a normal routing switch. That's what we have over here. These devices, the edge devices that you guys have, these devices can come in different forms. You can get it as a VM. You can get it as a physical device. There's a V-Edge device, which has a physical form or a virtual form. You have your ISRs. So these edge devices, if you want higher throughput, you can get the ISRs. And if you want higher throughput than that, you can get the ASRs for that. So these edge devices have the ability to be physical devices. But if you want the software devices, especially if you want to implement something in the cloud, you have the VMs for that as well. Absolutely, yeah. There's a whole bunch of different hardware that you have over here that you have the ability to implement your edges. This part is all soft or virtual. Got it? So this is our end result. This is where we're going to. So, but I want you guys to see that so you appreciate what you'll be building towards the end. All right? To get there, though, you need to understand the controller, the components that make it up. Controllers are on the same IP segment. In my case, they are, but they don't need to be. As long as they're reachable, it's absolutely okay. In terms of the actual speed and throughput type of things, I don't do that in the class. There's a bunch of different data sheets that you can take a look at in terms of the throughput of these devices. That's the main advantage that you get with those, is the throughput that you can take a look at the data sheet to do. From my perspective, I'm trying to show you how to implement the actual the technology. Got it? So what are the different devices over here? Let's take a look at that now. In this particular section over here, we are going to take a look at the SD-WAN overview. What are the different top components that you have? Some of them we've already talked about. We'll take a look at how to initialize the controllers, how to initialize the V edges or the C edges. I'm also going to talk about the hardware devices over here, how they differ from each other. We'll take a look at configuring templates, creating your first VPN using templates. This is a very important aspect. This is the power of SD-WAN, configuring centralized policies, some advanced configurations where we'll do the multi-V-edge setup. We'll take a look at things like T-lock extensions, some fancy configurations over here. We'll take a look at a V-edge and firewall versus NAT, those type of things. All right. Everybody okay with that? Good. So the advantages of running SD-WAN. What are the main advantages? I think we've covered most of them. Let's take a look at it now from the written perspective. Operational cost reduction. You're still doing the same things, but the difference is a single person can do the job of multiple people now. One single person that does those multiple people job from a central location rather than the one that's being cut off. So that's what SD-WAN will do for engineers, but at the same time, the number of networks are also growing. Provides security using built-in IPsec capabilities. In terms of setting up IPsec, it's inherent, it's automatically done. Traffic analysis and simulation tools, I showed you that. Easy change of topologies if I wanted to set this up in a manner where it's full mesh, so all these sites London, Dubai, Sydney, and LA are communicating to each other directly, I can do that. That's the default, which is called full mesh. But if I want all the traffic, for whatever reason, I want traffic to be routed from, let's say, Dubai as a central site. So all the traffic should go over here before it goes to the other site. Maybe you have some type of firewalling or service chaining that you're doing over here. You have the ability to easily change it into hub and spoke if you want to. Or for that matter, you can say certain traffic, I want to go through a certain site to get to another site. So you have a lot of power in terms of controlling the way the traffic flows from one side to the other. Do you need huge bandwidth to support this? No, you don't. No, you don't. You're using the existing bandwidth in a better way. What protocol is used inside interfaces of V-edges to determine the next hop? Where, on the outside or the inside? On the outside between the V-edges and the vSmart, which is your control plane device, it's a protocol known as OMP, Overlay Management Protocol. That's the one that basically exchanges all the routes over here. Internally, you have, depending on the device that you have OSPF, BGP, and in some cases, you also have EIGRP and ISIS. Can we select different applications for full mesh? Absolutely can. The controlling of how the traffic is routed is completely in your hands. It is IWAN, Frank. To be honest with you, it is IWAN. But IWAN was a product which Cisco was working on. They saw a more robust product in Viptela, so they bought it. And once they bought it, they just canned different devices. You have the vManage. This is where you actually sit and this is where the administrators reside. Everything that you do, I would say 99% of the time that you're working with SD-WAN, you're working with the vManage. All the policy configuration is done on vManage. You hardly ever go to vBond, you hardly ever go to vSmart, you hardly ever go to the vEdges. Everything that you need to do on those devices is actually configured on vManage. This is basically your management plane. This is the only device that you actually need to go into to manage the entire network infrastructure. Okay, a separate VM. Then you have another separate VM called vSmart. I'll get to the orchestration part as well. The vSmart is the device when you configure, let's say, any type of topology. The vManage sends that information down to vSmart. You don't configure the vSmart, you just configure vManage to push the policies. Push, for example, what routing protocol you're going to run. Let's say you're running OSPF as your protocol internally, or you're running OMP or OMP characteristics. You push those things to vSmart. vSmart in turn will push those control plane characteristics to all the vEdges. All right? So vManage talks to vSmart. vManage also has a connection to your vEdges. So any configurations that need to be done on your vEdges or your cEdges, they're also done by vManage. For example, this banner that I created over here, I configured that on vManage and pushed it directly to the vEdges. But let's say I was doing some type of redistribution or filtering of a route that needs to go from one side to the other. Remember I told you that let's say I want to make this into a hub and spoke site. Right now it's full mesh, right? Or you might want certain sites to be hub and spoke and the other ones to be full mesh. Those type of changes, when you make them, because they're changes to the control plane, those changes would be implemented by applying that policy to vSmart, and the vSmart will push the policies to your vEdges. You understand that? So most of the control plane that you do on vManage will be pushed to vSmart. vSmart will push it to the vEdges. The configuration changes that need to be done directly on the vEdges will be done directly to vEdge. Are you saying device-specific configs from vManage? Yeah, you do all device-specific configuration for vManage now. You initially onboard the device onto vManage, and from that point on, you do everything from vManage. Everything. Like this banner that I showed you, Rama. That was a device specific configuration. I'm getting to that. Got it? You guys are okay with that? Monitor. Guess what? What was I doing right now? When I did that simulation, or if I want to check my routes, I can do everything from vManage. For example, let's say I go in onto my device. I want to check the routes on a particular vEdge. So I want to check the routes on, let's say, this device, vEdge2, for example. All right? How would I do it? I want to go and do it from a centralized location. So I don't need to telnet in or SSH into that to check the device, the routes. I can do all of that from a central location, which is your vManage. Or if I want to configure that configuration part I showed you already, let it log in. Let's take a bit because I'm running the Zoom application at the same time. So I'll show you once it comes in that I have the ability to go over here from here and check all the routes. I can run the show IP route statement right over here. I can either telnet in or I can do it graphically. Both are available to you. Give it a second. Let's let it do its thing. Okay. There you go. Okay, good. It's there now. So let's say I want to check the routes of a particular device. Again, I'll go to the monitor. Go to network. I'll go to vEdge, whatever vEdge I want to check. And I'll go to real time over here. And all the different show commands that I want to do over here are now available to me over here. Take a look. So let's say I want to check routes. I can do IP routes. And I'm actually checking the routes that you're going to see are the routes on this particular device. So these are the routes that you're seeing. All these routes that you see over here are coming in from this particular device. So I'm doing all my checks from vManage. You get my point, guys? So everything is centralized now. Is there any restriction on vManage? Certain config only push through vManage versus vSmart? It's basically your management that you need to do. Any configuration that you need to do, Pankaj, are done directly from vManage to your vEdges. But if it's control plane things like you need to do in terms of policy and stuff, that is done to your vSmart. You will take a look at that. As you go through it, you will know, you clearly will know that this is going directly to the vEdge versus this is going to vSmart. As I do it, I'll show you. What's the role of vSmart? As you said, the device templates are directly correct. Device templates are directly done to your vEdges. What was this question? What's the role of vSmart? As you said, we don't configure anything on it. It's basically a control plane device. So all your control plane policies that you're doing, you're implementing them by sending them into your vSmart, and vSmart basically takes care of it. It's basically your routing hub, essentially. From which location they are at, you would need to know that. See, for example, when you see this TLOC address, this is like a router ID for that particular location. This is the TLOC for that particular location. So you would need to know what this address is coming from, this particular TLOC, which is associated with a particular location. So these addresses that you're assigning, the TLOC IPs, are the ones that will tell you where the routes are coming in from. You will understand all those that type of things as we do that. Got it, Ravi? So that TLOC IP that you see over there, that is very important for you to know what that is, and you need to plan that out ahead of time. Now, we still haven't talked about one device, which is this guy. Orchestration plane, right? What is this? They call it the orchestration plane. I call it the security plane. You don't do anything from vSmart. Everything that you do, troubleshooting, configuration, everything is in vManage. vSmart is the implementer. I call it the security plane. What do I mean by that? That's correct. What the vBond does, the reason I call it, you won't see this documentation, so when you're taking the exam, don't call it the security plane, call it the orchestration plane. But from the perspective of what it does, I call it the security plane because of the job it does. When a vEdge comes up, the first place and the only configuration that the vEdge needs, the vEdge does not know who the vManager is or who the vSmart is. The only configuration on the vEdge is a pointer towards the IP address or the host name for vBond. All right. So whenever the vEdge, cEdge, the ASRs, the ISRs, the 5000, the EN5000s, all of the devices, all the edge devices that you have, they only point towards the vBond. The way it works, the device comes up, the edge device, the WAN edge device comes up. It has the IP address of your vBond. It tries to establish a connection to the vBond. The vBond authenticates whether this vEdge is a proper or allowed vEdge or not. At the same time, the edge device also validates or authenticates the vBond to make sure it is talking to the right vBond or not. This authentication that is taking place, and this is very important for you guys to understand, is done by the help of certificates. Mostly from the graphical interface, most of them from the graphical interface. You implement everything, whatever you implement from the graphical will be pushed down to your command line. You can do it from the command line, but the amount of stuff that you can get done on the graphical, in the ease you can do it, it's much tougher to do it on the command line. How did the vEdge obtain the IP address of the vBond? I'll explain that. But before that, let's make sure we understand the purpose of the certificates. When you configure the vEdge, not just the vEdge, any WAN edge, you guys pay attention. This is very important for you guys to understand the whole process of onboarding. Any type of WAN edge that you have, you need to, it's not an option. You need to go to the Cisco website. There's an option over there called the PNP portal, plug and play portal. You need to have a smart account. In the smart account, what you do is you configure in the smart account, you configure your organization. So for example, guys, focus on this. Don't ask questions right now. Focus on what I'm try to do. So organization, let's say in my case, I've done KBits. This is very important for you guys to understand. Don't lose focus over here. So organization is KBits. You create the organization. Under the organization, the first thing that you would do is you would define the controller profile. In the controller profile for KBits, let's say it's a partner setting it up for you. The partner will ask you what is the host name or the IP address of your controller. Which controller are you talking about? The only controller that they care about is the vBond. All right. In that profile for organizational called kbits, I will specify, let's say my controller is 199.113, or I could give it what? vbond.kbits.in. Understood, guys? So I've gone into the PNP portal. I've gone in, configured my organization. Inside the organization, I've configured a controller profile where my controller IP address is this, or you can specify a host name, one of the two. All right. Now I have a controller profile created. At this point, the next thing that I need to do for every single WAN edge device that I have, any single WAN edge device that I have, I need to add a license for it. Now the WAN edge that I add could be hardware, or it could be a virtual device. Agreed? Hardware would be those ASRs, ISRs, etc. Even the vEdges. Virtual would be your vEdge, VIPTIL edge, or your CSR. As an example, when I'm adding it up, when I'm adding that device over here, if it's a virtual device, whether it's a vEdge or a cEdge, the vEdge or cEdge does not have a chassis number. Chassis number is like a number on that particular physical hardware. For the virtual, actually, let me do this first. Sorry about that. Let's do the hardware device first. On the hardware device, let's say it's an ISR, or for that matter, it's a vEdge, a VIPTIL edge 1000, which is a hardware vEdge device. The hardware vEdge device comes with it's a hardware device. It comes with a chassis number for that hardware. And on that chassis, if you do a show certificates serial, it comes with a serial number for that particular physical hardware. You get my point? So the physical device will have a certificate serial number installed by Cisco, and it will have a chassis number. When you do show certificate serial, it'll give you that information, and you get that information from that physical device that you bought at the time of buying it, and you add it as a WAN edge device. So in the WAN edge device, you need to use three things. You need to specify three things, which is a hardware device. You need to specify the chassis number. You need to put the serial number for that chassis. And you need to put the vBond profile, which you created in the previous step. Understood? And as soon as you do that, now this becomes added to your company profile. Everybody okay with that? And I would need to do that for each and every device that I want to buy. Basically, this is the licensing from Cisco. This is how Cisco controls the licensing. There's no way to get around that. You need to add that up into the portal. But this is only happening for physical devices. No, not really. Not really. No, you cannot. You can create a CSV file and upload it if you want to do that. But automated, no. VA meaning? Virtual account, you can create sub on the main account. You can create sub organizations if you want. All right, so you have the ability on the virtual account to create sub accounts to create different profiles for different controllers if you wanted to do that. Now this is for physical devices, right? How about logical devices? Let me finish this and we'll go to that. That is correct. For now, I'm provisioning them based on licenses. Now, this is for the physical devices. How about the logical devices? The vEdges, which are VMs, or the CSR routers, which are called cEdges. They don't have a chassis number. They don't have a serial number, right? For these type of devices, what they do, what you need to do is basically you go in there, you say, I want to provision a V edge or a C edge, you specify that. It'll ask you only for the controller profile. Okay? The controller profile is your VBON for your organization. Once you do that, it will add that V edge into your profile for the organization. So for example, in KBits, let's say I had, as an organization, I had 5 physical devices. They would be listed. And let's say I had bought 5 V edges, virtual. They would be listed. And let's say I bought 5 C edges, which are your CSRs. They would be listed. Now, you have the ability to link up this particular information about the devices that you have, the WAN edges that you have, directly from Cisco's portal into your vManage. So you go into your vManage and you basically specify that I want to sync up using my smart account and download the V edges and their serial numbers directly from Cisco.com. At that point, I'll ask you the username and password credentials to log in. And once you log in, it'll pull that information down into your vManage. Good so far? So in the vManage, it would know the 15 devices. That's one way of doing it. But let's say you don't want to do it like that. You want to do it manually. On the Cisco portal, if you want to do it manually, you have the ability to generate an encrypted file over here and download that encrypted file onto your local device. This file has a dot, I think it's called serial.viptela. Viptela, yeah. All right. It's a .viptela file, which has all your WAN edges. So if you don't want to do it based on the Smart Sync account, you download that serial.viptela file, and from your local device, you upload it into your vManage. And in there, in vManage, whether you did it through the Smart Sync or you did it manually, you would get the 15 devices listed. You understand that? And on those 15 devices now, the physical devices, will have a chassis number and an associated serial number because it was done on a physical device. For the virtual devices, it will have a chassis number and it will have a one-time password, OTP password token number. So it doesn't have a serial number at this point. It just has a token number for any virtual device, whether you do it manually or whether you do it through a Smart Sync. Correct, or on-prem vManages if you want to do that. Good so far, guys? Have this information in your mind. I'll show you where to use this. Which one, Abu Bakr? The virtual ones? The virtual ones, see, over here for the physical ones, because I got the number when I was registering it based on the physical device's chassis number and serial number, and I had imported it in, it would be in my WAN edge list. Agreed? Because I manually put it in, right? But how about the virtual ones? The virtual ones don't have a chassis number or a serial number. So the way they do that is when I onboarded that virtual box, it generates a chassis number, a virtual chassis number for me. Along with it, creates a password, like a one-time password token. This one-time password token allows me to register these devices manually. I'll show you that later on. Just remember, for virtual devices, I don't have a serial number. I have what? A chassis number and a one-time password, which is like a pre-shared key. Yeah, you should register only with a controller profile, right? Once you register with a controller profile, it will generate the chassis number and the OTP password automatically for you. Because this is virtual, right? So Cisco generates this chassis number for you, a virtual chassis number. Because the software does not have a chassis number associated with it. Get my point, guys? Now, what is this used for? Let's take a look at that. Everybody okay with the process of getting this WAN edge list now? Any questions about getting the WAN edge list? Yes, they do. Not only that, when you go to register your vEdge device, it actually looks for your chassis number, your organization name. It needs to match. The vManage, organization name, the WAN edge list, and the vEdge list, the organization name is checked. This information is in the encrypted file, and you can only upload that encrypted file into vManage. You cannot decrypt it and upload it. The only way you can get the WAN edge list in there is by using that .piptela file, the encrypted file. Good so far? So what have I done at this point? I've gone into my so the chassis number, serial number have to match for vBond to allow it to be added. If it's a physical device, right? Jesse, how about the virtual device? It does not have a serial number right now, right? So for the virtual devices, let's take a look at how to do that. So for the virtual devices, for the vBond to authenticate it, it matches the chassis number, the virtual chassis number that was generated, and the OTP that was given to that particular device. That is correct, Abu Bakr. Absolutely correct. Whether it's for a physical or a virtual, you do that. Now, how does the authentication take place? Before I get into the authentication, I want you guys to understand something about certificates, which is very, very critical to this. You guys might know it. I'm not sure if you do. Let me explain what certificates do in terms of authentication. Because the whole premise over here for authenticating, making sure I'm talking to the right device, is based on this concept of certificates. Certificates basically is a mechanism of authenticating your identity. In the identity, you might have your name, your organization name, your chassis number, your serial number. All this information is over here. Now, if I send that information to vBond, how does vBond know it is the right person that's registering? Or for that matter, how does the vEdge know it is talking to the actual vBond, not somebody that's impersonating the IP address? In order to do that, I need to use certificates. Okay? So what I do is whatever my information is, so my information with my name, my organization name, and so on and so forth, what I do is I take that information, I generate what is known as a CSR, Certificate Service Request, and I send that information to a device that is trusted by a lot of people. Think about this being like you requesting a passport. Because if you go to somebody and say, I want to take an exam, and this is who I am, and you take your picture and stamp it on a piece of paper and say, this is my name, this is my picture, would they take that as valid authentication? They would not. They say, no, we don't trust it. How do we know that you do not put your own picture or somebody else's picture over there? So what you do is you take your picture, your information, and you go to a government authority to issue you they take your picture, your information, but they stamp it saying, yes, we have verified that this person is the person who he says he is. And that person that has the reputation to be trusted is what is known as the certificate server. Okay, the certificate server is a software that allows you the ability to generate these, take this information that the client is providing and taking that same information that they gave, just like you send your picture to your passport office, they take your name, your picture, all your information and sign it, stamp it, and send it back to you. The signed information is in the form of an X.509 certificate, but it has the signature of whom? Signature of the CA server. Get my point? So every device needs to do what? So the VBON, what would it do? It would go to a trusted certificate server, also known as a root CA server, send its information, and the root certificate server will do what? Will generate a certificate to the VBON saying, yes, you are an authorized VBON. Make sense? So the VBON has done that information. vManage will do the same thing. And vSmart would do the same thing. This root certificate server that you have, you can either for money use Cisco's CA server. You can use Semantics, because Viptela used to use Semantic as their CA server, or you can use your own local CA server. All right, everybody understand that? So who do you go to as a root certificate server? You can either go to Cisco's CA server, you can go to Semantic CA server, or you can use your own CA server for doing all these authentications. Everybody okay with that? In our case over here, we're not going to pay Cisco or Semantic. We're going to do our own certificate server. We're going to install our own certificate server who's responsible for generating certificates to authenticate, vManage, vSmart, and vBond. All good so far. So when I do that, I also need to make sure that vManage, vSmart, and vBond authenticate with each other. So I have generated and gotten a certificate from the CA server, which is basically my information along with the signature. My information along with my signature. My information along with the signature. When the vBond tries to set up a relationship with vManage, he will present his certificate to him. This certificate is known as the identity certificate. Every device will have their own identity certificate. You can download that and install those things locally. But by default, it only gives you an option of Semantic, Cisco, and then you can use your own enterprise server, enterprise certificate server. That could be anything. So any one of those will work as long as you can install it. But it's not as an option that falls under the enterprise CA server, which could be anything. So every device has its own ID cert. Everybody okay with that? Now, when he presents his ID cert to him, how does vBond know that vManage is the vManage, the signature is valid or not? How does it know that this is a valid signature or not? He needs to have the root certificate. Absolutely, ma'am. So before I do any of this, what's the first thing that I need to do over here? I need to go to vManage. Before doing any of this thing, I need to insert or install or trust the root certificate of the CA server where? Onto vManage. Done? So you need to manually do it if it's your own enterprise certificate server. If it's Cisco, if it's Semantic, those root certificates are pre-installed onto vManage. Get my point? But if it's your own enterprise CA server, you need to install the root certificate for the CA server in vManage. Don't worry, I will show you every single step to get this done. But understand the process. So the first thing before I do anything else, I'm going to take my CA certificate, CA servers root certificate, and install it onto vManage. Why is that important? Because this is the one that is going to be used to verify the incoming packet from the other guys. Understood? The two that they put in there are basically Symantec and Cisco. Everybody okay with this so far? Now, once I've done that in vManage, the next thing that I will do is manually, any certificate. When it goes into your enterprise root certificate, you can use anything that you want. You can use a Microsoft CA server, you can use OpenSSL, anything that you want. So the first step in this whole process is to make sure I have the root certificate for vManage, for my root certificate installed on my vManage. User, if you don't mind, put your name over there so I know who it is. All right, you can rename the host. So what's the first thing that I do is I go in and install the root certificate inside vManage. That root certificate depends on whatever CA server you're using. Whether you're using Microsoft, whether you're using OpenSSL, whether you're using XYZ, it really doesn't matter. But whatever you're using, you need to install the root certificate over there. Good so far? Specific. Done? At that point, I will then generate what? A CSR for vManage. My CA server. The CA server will issue me a certificate based on the CSR, and I'll install my identity certificate. So for my vManage, what do I do once I install the root certificate? I will go in and say, okay, I am vManage for KBits. I want to register myself. I send my information to the CA server. I go to the CA server. In the CA server, I verify the information and issue the certificate. Now vManage has its own identity certificate and it has the root certificate. So at the end of this, you will have two certificates over here on what? On vManage. What are the two certificates? The root certificate and the ID cert for vManage that identifies vManage. Everybody okay with this? Now, once I'm done with that, the next thing that I do is I will go ahead and register my vBond in my vManage or vSmart. Doesn't matter which order you do it in, as long as you do both. So you would go into vManage and you'll say, I want to register inside vManage. Let's say my vBond over here is 192.199.113. It will ask me for the admin username and password, which I will not change. I'll keep it as the default as admin. So it will log in into where? Into my vBond. You do need to do basic CLI configuration for vBond to set the IP address so that he can log in, but that's pretty much all you got to do. So I'll log into vBond using the username and password for vBond. That's the authentication between vManage and vBond. The username password for vBond. So vManage logs into the vBond and it gets registered as a controller in vManage now. Good so far? Everybody okay with that? So manually, I will go in and specify the IP address of my vBond, log into it, and add that device into my vManage. Everybody okay? As soon as I do that, by default, in Viptela 17.3 and above, what this vManage does, it automatically takes this root certificate and installs it onto vBond. Automatically, the trust level over here was that username password. Based on that, it will push the root certificate onto vBond. So I don't need to install the root certificate on vBond. So right now, vBond already now has what? the root cert. Everybody okay with this? Yeah? How did it get the root cert? vManage has a root cert. I authenticated the device, added the device into vManage. I pushed the root certificate automatically to vBond. Now, vBond does have a root certificate. It still does not have the ID cert. So again, in my vManage, I will go ahead and install what? Oh, sorry, I'll generate a certificate service request for vBond. My name is vBond1. My IP address is this, or my organization name is this, so on and so forth. It'll generate that CSR. I'll take that CSR to whom? Into my CA server. And what will the CA server do there? The CA server will generate the ID cert for whom? For vBond. I need to take that and insert it. Again, all this thing, I don't need to do anything on vBond once I've registered it. I'm doing this in vManage. I will now also, besides having the root certificate, I will also have a ID cert for whom? For vBond, which I do based on the generation of the CSR, taking the CSR into the CA server, issuing the certificate, and installing the certificate back into vBond, although the console I use is vManage. So now the vBond has the root certificate and the ID cert. Everybody okay with that? So now my vManage has a root and ID cert. vBond has a root and ID cert. The root certificate is the same. ID cert is unique to that particular device. What's the third controller that I have? The vSmart. Again, what do I do with the vSmart? Same thing. I would go over here and add vSmart. How do I add the vSmart? IP address, and the admin username and password. Done? As soon as I do that, that gets added over here as vSmart. As soon as it gets added, what gets done to this vSmart? Immediately, the root certificate is pushed. Once that's done, I need to again generate what? The CSR. Once the CSR is generated, take that CSR into the CA server, issue the certificate. I'll show you these steps, one step at a time, so you guys know what I'm doing, but I want you guys to understand the concept behind it before I do it. He will generate the ID cert. Now this guy also has the ID cert. Now these three guys are up and running and they're authenticating to each other. Based on what? Their ID cert and the root certificate. The root certificate is the one that validates the ID cert that the incoming device has. ID cert you need to manually install inside vManage. The root certificate is automatically pushed. Everybody okay with that? For everything, for vBond as well as for vSmart. And you will see these steps done. These are my first steps that I need to do to get these controllers up and running and communicating to each other. Get my point? So certificates play a big part in this. Good? Everybody fine with that? What I've shown you guys overall, from a perspective of what we need to do, let me go into my folder over here. Basically, I have talked about, I haven't done it, but I've talked about initializing vManage from CLI, which is nothing more than giving it an IP address. so that I can control it or configure it from what? IP config and some system config. I'll show you what the system config is. I've done the same thing over here, done the same thing over here, and then this part, initializing vManage in the graphical, is that certificate part that I talked about, registering vBond in vManage, the certificate thing that I talked about, registering vSmart in vManage, the certificate thing that I talked about. I will demonstrate these things to you guys, but I want you guys to see what are we doing at this point. So for all this to work properly, the first thing that I want to show you guys is the enterprise certificate server, how to install that, and I'll show you that. But I just want you guys to understand where we're at in this whole picture. Everybody okay with that? Good? All right, perfect. Fusion router is not for this. That's for your mixing technologies. That's for SDA. Absolutely, Mark. Right over here. Let's do the other one. Let's do this one, the simple one. So in this topology, what I've done is this is my vManage. vSmart, vBond. This is my management network. I really don't need it, but if I want to do out-of-band management, where my admin PC is at, I can use this network for management. And to be honest with you, after the initial setup, the only one that you really go to is vManage. This server over here is going to be my certificate server. Got it? You guys good with this? So good time to take a break right now. We've been going for a while. The other topology, I'll show you. It's over there as well. Once it's authorized, you don't really need to. Is this process documented anywhere? I'll give you the labs for that, Rama. So it will be documented for you guys. So you'll get a lab as part of the course, which will show you the actual devices, or the actual steps to do that. Done? Now, we'll take a break right now. We've been going for almost 2 hours. Non-Viptela components, correct. I can send you the UNL file for that. Let's say it's 11:20 roughly, because it's past 11:16, so 11:20 till 11:35. So roughly around 19 minutes so far. I will definitely do that. I will do a class for SDA as well. I'm just waiting for my equipment, because my equipment is stuck in LA in a warehouse. I just can't get my hands on it. Otherwise, I was supposed to be in Los Angeles in March to install it in my data center so I could do the labs, write the labs for it. Unfortunately, we got stuck. So as soon as it's available, as soon as I can move, I'll do that. I know, I might have you do that, Louis. Let's take that break. We'll come back. Today what I want to do is I want to give you basically the overview of that, and I'll also show you how to at least bring up your controllers. So by the end of the class today, you will see what I've just talked about, how that is done. Done? Yeah, Matt, unfortunately. Break time. Ready to do the fun stuff now. All right. So now that we understand a little bit about the different components, let's just review it a bit. And then we're going to take a look at a basic setup, bring it up, at least the controllers I want you guys to get up and running. But before we do that, there's one more element that we need to take a look at. Let's analyze that first. So first thing is, let's just do a review of what we just talked about in terms of the controllers. Now you guys at this point should be aware. Oops, sorry, I need to get the chat window up. There you go. The first thing I want you guys to understand over here is this part over here. You guys okay with this? The components and their functionality. So what does a VBON do? Oh yeah, we haven't talked about that. We did the certificate part. Now, coming back to the last bit over here is the functionality of VBON. What does VBON bring to the table? Let's take a look at it. Now, I have a VEdge that comes up, and let's say it is a cloud device. It's a VM. It does not have a chassis number. It does not have any configuration. We'll do it manual right now. We'll take a look at ZTP as well in a bit, but let's do a manual process. So I come in over here, I configure it with the IP address of the VBON manually. Let's say in my case, I'm going to configure it with an IP address of 113. So somebody was asking me a question about how does it know where the VBON is? I manually configure that. I'll give it an IP address on my interface, whatever interface I'm using. Let's say gig 0/0. I'm going to give it an IP address so it has reachability. And once I'm done with that, now I need it to be registered on my cloud. Now on the VEdge, what I would do is I would download the root certificate so that it can authenticate the VBON, so that this VEdge manually will trust the root certificate from your enterprise. Now, if you're using Cisco.com or Cisco's root certificate, or for that matter, Semantics, those root certificates are pre-installed on the VM. But anything else, like in our case, I'm using my KBits CA server. The first job, once I configure the IP address, I need to download the root certificate of the CA server on here, so that when the VBON comes to me and says, I am the VBON, I can use a certificate to authenticate the VBON. Everybody okay with that? So once I configure the IP address of the VBON, I configure the interface IP of the VEdge, I will then go ahead and download the root certificate. So this guy has a root certificate for what? For the CA server. Good so far? This is a manual process. You can use WinSCP or any of the SFTP device applications to download that the root certificate into it. I'll show you how to do that. But at the end of the day, I need to have the root certificate installed over here in my VEdge. Everybody okay with that? Yes? This is called the skinny configuration. The skinny configuration has enough configuration so it can register with the VBON and from VBON to the vManage. Now what happens over here is, as soon as I do that, now I need to register my VEdge onto my controller set. And in my controller set, I have my VBON, I have my vSmart, and my vManage. The downloading of the certificate, the root certificate can be downloaded from anywhere. It's a manual process, so a user does it. Like an administrator will download it. Could be done from any device. You don't do it from the VBON. It's actually done on a server. So what I would do is, on my CA server, I would install WinSCP and then push it down. Yeah, my point, it could be done on an admin PC. Wherever my root certificate is, I can push that file. That's a file. It's a file, whatever you want to call it. I call it root cert. It's a CER file or a PEM file. Those are formats of your root certificate. Got it? So once that file is there, now this might be vBond, this might be smart, this might be vManage. Now, first thing that I need to do is I need to go to my vBond and register. Do you guys remember the WAN edge list that I had over here that I manually had installed in where? On vManage, or I could have synced it up by using my smart account. Either way, I would have my WAN edge list where? Over here. You guys remember that? In which I had the chassis number, the serial number for all the different devices. That's on your vManage, correct? The vManage automatically pushes that information to where? To your vBond. So the vBond has the information about what are the valid WAN edges. It's a whitelist. Whitelist basically means the list of all the devices that are actually allowed to come connect in. So that it would have the chassis number. It would have the serial number, or what? If you don't have a serial number, what else do you have? For the virtual machines, what did I tell you? If you don't have a serial number, instead, what do you have? A one-time password, the token, right? And then it'll also have the org name. The list of all the WAN edges and their numbers will be over here. Get my point? So as soon as this device comes up, it will go and try to register over here. In that registration command, you would need to know the chassis number. And if it's a vEdge device, you would need to know the OTP. You would put that into the command. And based on the command, it's called the vEdge activate command. It will send a request to the configured vBond saying, hey, listen, I'm this chassis number, this is my serial number. Not serial number, it's a vEdge. So it'll be what? An OTP number, and this is my org. That information on the vBond exists. It says, okay, this is a valid device. Okay, if it's a valid device, what vBond does automatically in conjunction with the vManage, actually what it does is it says, okay, good, you're authenticated. Okay, you're authenticated. Once you're authenticated, what it does is it will basically take a identity certificate, it'll generate an identity certificate via the vManage and push it down over here. Actually, it's not even him who does it. It will hand over that connection. It will tell it the name of the vManage. So the IP address of the vManage is conveyed to your vEdge via vBond. So the only address that this guy needs to know is the vBond address. Once the vBond address is given, it will make that connection. It will get authenticated by vBond. vBond will give it the IP address of the vManage, and it will also tell the vEdge where the vManage is. So now these guys know each other. They will establish a connection. As soon as that connection is established, the vManage will automatically generate a CSR on behalf of what? This guy. Because he knows the information now from vBond. It will go to the certificate server. It will get the identity certificate for it and push that identity certificate to that vEdge automatically. Now, you do have the ability, if you want to, you can make this process manual in the sense that it will generate the CSR, but then you manually, as a person, as an administrator, will need to go in, take the CSR, go to the CA server, and issue the certificate manually and import it into vManage. You can do that. But most of the time, you don't do that. You allow vManage to automatically generate a CSR for the vEdge, go to the CA server, get the request, download it to him, in which the vManage is doing all the work for you. All right. So at the end of this whole process, this guy will actually get a certificate installed, and it will also get a serial number installed by vManage. So it's no longer having an OTP. when you see this device over here, it'll actually have a generated serial number on the vManage. So again, let me go through the process again. It's all DTLS. Unlike vSmart and vBond that obtain their IDs directly from the CA server, again, it's done by vManage, but it's done manually, right? This is done automatically. You still need to do that on vManage, but the difference is for vBond and vSmart, I had to do it manually. For VA, it's done automatically. You get my point? So again, the connection south is DTLS generally. You do have the ability to specify TLS. That's an option that you have when you set up your vSmart. So again, let me go through it again. What's the first thing that you do? You do your skinny configuration. What does the skinny configuration contain? Basically, identification for the edge. Okay. You have the edge over there. What else do you have? You have the IP address, local IP address, and you have the vBond IP address. Once you do that, you have your CA server or whatever admin device download what? The root CA onto this guy. Once that's done, he will again he would need to get that information from the administrator over here, where he would need to give him what information? Can you guys hear me? Gucci says no audio. Okay, Gucci, it's your side. Thank you. All right, what was the question? Somebody had a question about that just went up. Clear. Even if Vantage is hardware or software, does vManage push the ID cert? Now, that's a good question, Joey, because if it's a physical device, the ID cert is already there on the hardware device. So you don't need to worry about it in that case. Not only is the certificate there, the certificate contains a serial number in there. So for a hardware device, you don't need to worry about getting the chassis number and the OTP from where? From the vManage, because that part is already done for you. Because it's a hardware device. That's why I had to copy that chassis number and the serial number at the time I was provisioning the WAN edge device. You get my point? Joey, does that make sense? Even if it's a non-Cisco, non-semantic. Well, it's a physical device. See, it's coming from Cisco. If it's a non-Cisco, non-semantic certificate, no, in that case, you would need to do it. Okay. If it's you would need to download the root certificate, but you don't need the chassis number or the OTP number. Okay. So you download the root certificate over here, then you get the chassis number and OTP. You would register with the vBond. The vBond would authenticate you based on this information, send your information to vManage saying, hey, listen, this guy is okay. And he will also tell him the IP address of vManage. They start communicating to each other. The vManage will generate a ID cert for this guy, push it down to him. He will also generate a serial number dynamically for this virtual device and push it down. So he will also have a chassis number and a serial number. So in your vManage, initially, when you have the WAN edge device, you will see the virtual chassis number for the VM along with the OTP. Once he registers, that OTP will be taken off and the generated serial number that has been generated by the vManage over here will be shown over here. So it'll have a normal serial number, just like a physical hardware device would. Understood? So this is the process, the manual process of registering a vEdge on your controllers. Got it? So that's how the authentication takes place. And all this is done based on the certificate, the root CA. Very, very important part of the whole process. Now, let's take a look. Now that you guys have done this, now this becomes easy to go through. Hopefully, let's take a look at it. You guys understand this part, right? The orchestration plane, which is your vManage. the management plane, which is all your administration, all your commands, every configuration that you do after the initial part is done on vManage. It's a central pane of configuration that you do everything from. You don't need to go to any other device to configure SD-WAN. Everything is done from that one central console. vBond, what is it used for? It's the one that will onboard the device initially, and then every time it comes up in the future, it will authenticate the device. It is also responsible for distributing the information about who your vSmart is for the vEdges. It is responsible for distributing the vManage IP addresses to all the different devices. That's why all the different devices that you guys have, they only need to know whose address manually. Only the vBond. The vBond will actually tell them about everyone else. So the only configuration that you need to do on your vEdges is the IP address of the vBond. This guy, we haven't talked about as much, but this is the one that does all your control plane, all your routing, all your exchanging of your control plane information. What traffic goes where is done by vSmart. All right. I would say in CPU, think about it being like a route reflector in BGP. Get my point? So all the traffic, all the routing traffic, routing information is propagated by vSmart. The vEdges do not form a neighbor relationship in terms of routing with each other. It's all done by vSmart. Absolutely. Even if when it reboots, it'll go to the vBond first, get authenticated, and then do the same thing over here. Segregation of duties so that you can scale it. Segregation of duties will also lead to scalability. And that's what they've done. These three things in today's networks are done on the same device. The management, orchestration, authentication, and the control plane is all done on the same device right now. Got it? And then you have your edges over here that are basically your data. They also play a part in the control plane in the sense that they will be running routing with whom? vSmart. What is the protocol that they use to communicate between the edges and vSmart for sending out information about the routes? You have to OMP, exactly. The overlay management protocol, OMP, is the routing protocol that is used between the vSmart and the vEdges. The single point of failure you can eliminate by having multiple what? vSmart devices. Data plane, I'm not going over here at all. Data plane, by default, although I do have I actually never go for my data plane to my controllers. My data plane is always segregated from what? This way. So I'm not actually going to my controllers at all for any data. My normal data goes directly from vEdge to vEdge. You might want to do hub and spoke. Even when you do hub and spoke, one of the vEdges will act as what? The hub. So you might want to do what do you call it? Hub and spoke, but even in that case, this is not your hub. Understand? Let me give you a topology to make you understand that. Is this? Yeah, this is the right one. So over here, I have the device site. I have two elements to the device site. I have the controller network over here, and I have my data network over here. Let's say I want to do hub and spoke over here. My hub and spoke will be between what? Like this, not to the controllers. You get my point? So the controllers are not playing any part in the data plane configuration, data plane propagation. How does it work with dynamic IPs from ISPs similar to DMVPN? Very good point. So let's say it gets a dynamic IP. Where does it go? What is the only address that it knows at that point? It only knows about the vBond address. So when it sends that information over here for the registration to the vBond, in that configuration, it will send its public and private address. And you can see that. I'll show you that. When we do the actual lab, I have one of the labs where I do it based on that. So even in this initial configuration, it will use whatever the public address is, because the address is never used over here as an authentication mechanism. It is used just for communication. What am I using for authenticating? It's a certificate, right? So I don't really care about the address. So once I authenticate, I will tell him what my public and private address is. He will relay that information to whom? To vManage and vSmart. So these guys know if they want to communicate to this particular VH, they need to use this public address to communicate to it. Understood? And you guys will see that, not on this lab, because over here I did everything publicly, but in the second lab I do that. This one over here. See, one of these elements over here I kept was, one of the VHs over here is on what? A private address. You see that? And it only has an internet connection, so it would need to be NATed. This guy in this case would know that VH5, his public address is 192.1.31.x and its private address is 168.31.x. So if it changes, it will let the VBON know what the new address is and do it based on that. Absolutely. Either manually or you can also do it dynamically, Rama. That is done through zero-touch provisioning. We'll talk about that specifically, how that works. I'll have a special section on that. But you have to have the VBON address either manually or automatically done on every VH. So they need to do that. You have the ability to do clusters. You can even put the vSmarts in what is known as a V container. So you can have multiple vSmarts in a single container for high availability. Is there only one vManage? If you do that, you are running the risk of a single point of failure. So I would always recommend that you do it based on a cluster. They have the ability to do it based on a cluster. So when it's a cluster, it automatically has that read-write capability on all the different devices. Not in this class, unfortunately. Too much stuff to do in 1 week. How about the logging or messages of troubleshooting this brings in case we ran into issues? I'll show you what are the different things that you need to take a look at. Yes, there are certain things from commands that you need to take a look at in terms of understanding what are the different things that can happen wrong and how do you fix it. Got it? All right, so let's move on to the next thing over here. Now we should be able to move through this real quick. The management plane, we already talked about, single pane, where everything is there. So every configuration that you do for SD-WAN, that is the advantage of doing that. You don't need to go to multiple devices to start configuring these things. I'm doing everything from a single location. Centralized policies, centralized templates, troubleshooting in a single place, even the upgrading of your devices. Let's say you have a new version of VH that you want to deploy. You can do it centrally. You upload the image into the center repository of the vManage, and the vManage will then push that software upgrade to all your VHs as well. So that's also available to you with vManage. Something that you would do with Prime. You can do that with vManage as well. Got it? Everybody okay with this? Yeah? The next one is your VBON. Do you guys remember this one? This is the authentication device. Once it authenticates the device, it will register the device with the vSmart and vManage. It will exchange that information. This one requires public reachability, whether you do it through public IP directly assigned to it or you do a static one-on-one NAT, you need to do that. How does an MPLS only site discover a public VBON? In terms of what? You need to make sure that address is routed through your MPLS network. So for example, if it's a private only network, it's an MPLS only network, you need to make sure that you have your VBON locally. What about, do we need to change the vManage images as well if you change the vEdges? Yes, Rama, very good question. There is a compatibility matrix that you have on Cisco's website that basically tells you what controller works with what vEdge version. Not all controllers work with all vEdge versions. So you need to take a look at that compatibility matrix where it specifies this particular controller will work with these vEdge devices or cEdge devices. Absolutely, it must. So, South, again, you need to provide reachability to the public VBON. In my case, for example, what I've done, just to let you know, what I've done is I have this public 199 address that is available through the internet, but what I've also done with that, I've advertised that through my MPLS cloud. So this guy over here knows how to reach 199. You understand that? So by advertising that into my MPLS network, they would know how to reach it through the MPLS network as well. Get my point? So as long as you have reachability, it doesn't matter how you do it. In my case, that's how I did it. But you do need to have reachability. All right, so that is, everybody okay with the VBON, right? Understand what it does? So it's basically the first device that your vEdges go to, communicate to. It's the one that distributes the information about what vEdges you have, what are your vSmart and vManage IP addresses. Good, guys? Everybody okay with this? Moving on to the next one. The next one over here, vSmart. Again, what is this device used for? This is your controller. Think about this being your BGP RR, route reflector. It is not doing any data portion. It is just required for the purpose of propagating the route. So, for example, in my topology over here, I have all these networks. I need to propagate those networks. I'm going to use my own local routing protocol to get the route from my network device to my vEdge. Once it's on the vEdge, I'm going to run OMP, not with other vEdges. All these OMP relationships will only be set up between the vEdge and vSmart. Like that. So all the routes that I learned from Rome or London or Los Angeles or from Dubai will be sent to vSmart. vSmart then will redistribute those, not redistribute, but basically reflect those routes from one to the other, having the next hop still point to the original vEdge by default. You can change that, but by default, it's a full mesh configuration. So vSmart does not do any data. It's just responsible for doing your control connections. All the control connections go to the vSmart. It is the one that sets up all your routing protocol, which is OMP in this case, relationships with all the other devices. You get my point, guys? Everybody? Unchanged, yeah, absolutely. By default, Rush. You understand that? It is by default. I can do changes to that. I can change it by doing the policy. Remember I told you I can set it up as a hub and spoke if I want to. In that case, I will change it to the particular one, not to myself. For example, let's say I want to make this as the hub. I'll get all the routes from all the different locations, get it over here, and then replicate it to everyone else. But at that point, I'm going to change the address, the next hop address, to the vEdge. And the next hop address is not really an IP address. It is a special identifier, which is called the T-lock. And I'll explain what the T-lock is. Again, as I said, step by step, I'm going to unravel the entire thing, but you need to be patient with it. So the T-lock is changed. It's not the next hop. It is what is something called the T-lock. And I'll explain what the T-lock is. Got it? So that's how you would change it. But by default, you're right. It is unchanged. You good so far, guys? And I can show you that. See, if I go to vEdge 1, I'm on the command line. I can also do command line, by the way. if I do show IP route VPN1, which is my service VPN, take a look. VPN VH1 is over here, not on this topology, it's on the second one. VH1 is over here in Dubai. Let's say I want to get the routes from site 2. Site 2, the T-lock over here is 10.2.2.203. This T-lock is 10.2.2.204. I'll explain what that T-lock is in a bit, but understand whenever you see 10.223 or 10.224, they're pointing to VH3 and VH4. 203 is VH3, 204 is VH4. Now take a look at this routes from that perspective. If I want to get to 10.21, 22, 23, when you look at your routing table over here, actually, yeah, 10.10 is local. Now it will tell you that I've learned 10.20 from where? From 10.2 to 203, which is VH3, and 10.2 to 204. Notice though that I have, what did I tell you? I don't have any relationship between what? VH3 and VH4. You get my point. My relationship is always with whom? With vSmart. But I'm receiving the route over here, this route, for example, via these two, and in a load balancing manner. This is automatic. I haven't changed any of the policies to change this, but this is the way it would have worked automatically. I'll explain T-lock. T-lock is basically an identifier for a particular device, but what is it made up of? I'll explain that in detail. It's a very important component of SD-WAN. You understand T-lock, you basically unlock SD-WAN. Got it? You don't understand T-lock, you'll be going for a spin most of the time. So I'll spend time on that. Clear so far, guys? All right, so this part is done as well. Oops, what did I do? All right, so vSmart is done. Now the controllers, how do I, or where do I host the controllers? I have the ability, because it's a VM, where can I host the controllers? I can host the controllers on a cloud, because it's a VM. You can do it on Amazon, you can do it on Azure, you can do it on Cisco Cloud. Cisco Controller as a service. Cisco also sells these controllers rather than selling it to you as a VM. They'll say, okay, we manage your controller as a service. So all you do is you get basically an IP address for the vBond, and you're done with that, and an IP address for vManage, and you just point to it. You understand that? They're just selling you the service. So they're using their cloud services to provide that. Or you can do it on-prem. On-prem, it's a VM. You can install it on ESXi. You can install it on KVM. Those are the two on-prem capabilities that you have. For all these controllers, each one is a separate VM. So don't think you can do it on one device. Yeah, physically it can be one physical device, but there are 3 different VMs. Well, from a Cisco perspective, this is the best. They take care of a lot of the headaches that you have. You don't need to worry about installing vManage, installing vBond, vSmart. Everything is done for you. That is correct, Matt. That is correct. Most of them are hosted on the cloud, not necessarily on Cisco. If they told you that 80% is on Cisco, that's wrong, but it is on cloud. Google, they work really closely with, or for that matter, Amazon. Google, they're working very closely with. Look at search an article. It was written about maybe a week, 10 days ago, where they're really working closely with Google, the Google Cloud Service, so that they can actually manage the inside of the network as well. But Michael, that's not always the case. It depends on the level of the customer. All right. Good, you guys, everybody understand the hosting options over here, right? Now, the WAN edges. These are the actual devices that do the data traffic. The WAN edge device communicates to the vSmart controller using OMP to set up the data flows. This is the control part. Implements the data plane and routing traffic available as a physical or a virtual device. Nothing that we have not discussed over here. Yeah. What are the different options for your WAN edges? These are certain options that you can use. Again, as I said, there's a data sheet on each one. Each one has a performance matrix in terms of one gives you an X amount of throughput versus the other. These two are physical. This is a combination. This is really a compute system. So on this compute system, it's a special hardware which you have the ability to install your VMs. All right, these two CSRs are completely VMs. V-edges, you can have physical or VMs. So these are the different flavors of what? V-edges or C-edges that you get. It is DTLS, which is going to do encryption based on ESP. The connections are all DTLS over there. The pure IPsec is between the V-edges. What's a C-edge? It's basically a CSR 1000E. All right. So that would be this guy. Now, everybody okay with the controllers? Now let's get into the configuration bit. Finally, fun stuff now. Every device, I shouldn't say every device, every Viptela device comes with this concept of VPNs. Misleading for us from the networking field. VPNs for them is nothing but VRS for us. There are multiple VPNs that they have. There are two predefined ones that they use for a specific functionality. There's a VPN called 512. If you want to do out-of-band management, it is done through VPN or VRF 512. How many people over here work with the Nexus? 5K, 7K. You know, in Nexus, there's an interface called the MGMT interface, right? Is the MGMT interface in a particular VRF by default? You don't need to create that VRF, it's there, right? It's called what, Renee? Management, right? It's a separate, dedicated VRF for out-of-band management. This is exactly what VPN 512 is. Oops, let's change the color. It's a separate VPN, separate VRF that is used specifically for what? Out-of-band management. Good so far? I need to configure in the VPN 512, I need to configure just an IP address on it. Nothing more. Maybe a default gateway if you are routing in your management VLAN. Got it? Then I have a separate one, second one, which is also required on any Viptela device. It's called VPN 0. This is called the transport VPN. A better word for this would be control VPN. What do I mean by this? What do I need to use this VPN for? All the not the configuration part only, everything that you have that is not for end user traffic, that is traffic for V-Edge vSmart, vBond, vManage. All that traffic is sent in this VPN, in a separate VPN. So control VPN, whether it's OMP, whether it's the GTLS tunnels that are established from vEdge to your vBond to establish the authentication session, whether the vBond is talking to the vSmart for getting the information about all the valid vEdges. Everything is done inside the VPN 0. Everybody okay with that? What type of traffic is transmitted in VPN 512? It would generally be your browsing traffic or telnet traffic or SSH traffic into those devices. Browsing in the sense because you have a graphical interface to connect up to vManage, that traffic would go through your management interface or management VLAN. Telnet, if you want to telnet into that device from an out-of-band setup. Now, let me ask you this. Do I need this? Let's say I have a vEdge over here. It does have one VPN over here that will be dedicated as 512. I'm saying over here, I normally log in from my management network into vManage. Do I need this VPN 512 over here? It will, you cannot delete it. It will be there, but I don't need to use it because I'm configuring this through what? Through vManage, through the outside interface. I'm not doing out-of-band management, I'm doing in-band management. It's like this. How many people over here have worked with the ASA firewall? You seen an ASA firewall before? Does an ASA firewall come with a special interface that is dedicated for management, physically? Do you have to use it? You don't, right? Same thing over here. The management interface that you have, the VPN 512, you don't have to use it. But having said that, you need to have it there. Even if you're not using it, you cannot delete it. You get my point? So 512 is something that will always remain there, but you don't necessarily need to use it. Although my initial setup that I generally do for setting up this initial configuration from my Win server to this guy, I do use the management interface, but not really required. Okay, so every device, as I said, will have two special type of VPNs. And what are those VPNs? VPN 0 and VPN 512. VPN 0 is important. This is known as a transport VPN. Think about it being the control VPN. Control VPN means every type of communication that happens between the vSmart, the vEdge, vBond, vManage, or for that matter, the non-V devices. Everything communicates through the transport VPN. Front door VRF, absolutely correct, Michael. I didn't want to go there because I'm not sure how many people would know about front door VRFs with TMVPN. So that's why I didn't want to give that example. But that's what it is. You get my point, guys? Everybody okay with this? Now, your data portion is beyond this. So you have the ability now to create your data VPNs, which will be 1 through 5111, and then you can go from 513 to, I think, 65,000 some odd number. Huge number. All right? That's your data VPNs. You just need, think about it. On a router, how many VRFs do you create? This is basically your VRF. So that's the number of VRFs that you can create. Good so far, guys? But one thing that is important over here to understand, which is different than a normal VRF. Normally speaking, a VRF concept is locally significant. You guys agree? I can have a VRF on one device that has nothing to do with the VRF on the other device. They are locally created, locally significant. The VPNs that I create over here for data are significant across the board. So whatever I have in VPN, let's say 1 over here, needs to be in VPN 1 over here. So if I want them to communicate to each other, they need to be in the same VPN. So it's not just specific to what? A particular device. If I want these devices to talk to each other, I need to put them in the same VPN ID across the board. If I put them in 2 different VPN IDs, they will not be able to talk to each other directly. If you do want to do that, you do have the capability of doing that. That is the same thing that you would do in a normal VRF type of setup, which is basically leaking routes from one VRF into another VRF. You do have the capability of doing it. Well, what I'm trying to tell you over here is, by default, if you set it up based on different type of VPN numbers, they will not talk to each other. So it's not just significant locally, it is significant all the way across. So whatever ID you use, you need to be using the same ID on all the different edge devices, WAN edge devices across the board. You get my point, guys? Now, along the same line, just a side note over here. That's why, no, this is just a diagram. Okay. You guys see the CSR over here? The CSR does not have a concept of VPN. Instead, the CSR has a concept of what? VRF. So when you do the configuration on the CSR, the VRF that you're going to use for, let's say, your data VPN over here, it's not going to be called VPN. If you want to check the routes over here, I'm not going to do show IP route VPN 1. Why? This does not understand VPN 1 because it's a Cisco device. You need to do show IP route VRF 1 over here because it's a Cisco device. You get my point? So this command is slightly altered over there. This one, the one that I did over here to see all the routes. You remember this? Same thing on, what do you call it? On the ISRs, CSRs, ASRs. This VPN concept is specific to what? The, what do you call it? The VIPTELA devices. So this part you should be okay with then. Let's take a look. Controllers have 2 VPNs by default, VPN 0, VPN 512. Take that one step further. This is also the case with what? The VIPTELA edges. So it's not just the controllers, also the edges are the same. VPNs are like your VRFs. VPN 512 is for the out-of-band VPN. VPN 0 is your transport or the control VPN. Good? So this is very important to understand over here. Any questions at this point, guys? Blame Cisco for that. Now, let's do this. The service VPNs. But before we get into the service VPNs, I want you guys now, from this point on, we'll get into the other stuff. But before that, I want you guys to see some of the stuff. I want to set this topology up, but my focus right now, in terms of setting the topology up, is not going to be part of, to do this part. Forget this for right now. Let's just concentrate on getting these devices registered to each other. Okay? How do I go about registering my VBON, vManager, vSmart to each other and authenticating them, getting them up and running? I'm going to do this in, what do you call it, in EVNG. Where's this thing? Keeps on disappearing on me. So what are the different steps that I need to do? The first thing, which I'm not going to do today, is set the WAN up. What do I mean by set the WAN up? When you're doing this lab for your own, you need to set up your MPLS cloud, do the routing over here, set the static routes because it's the internet, maybe towards your public addresses that you might have over here. Those type of things we'll do tomorrow when we're doing the full lab. My objective today is to get this part working. Okay, so just the cloud part or the controller part. We will do it for lab number 1, this guy over here. So my focus right now is going to be set this up. Just this part. All right, everybody okay with this? Yeah, all right, good. So what are the steps? Although I have a topology already, what I'm going to do is I'm going to simulate it from scratch. I'm going to build a brand new topology. I'm going to stop this topology over here. And I'm going to build a test lab for you guys from scratch and show you the steps that are involved in setting this up. And I want to keep it over here so I can see your messages. So I'll go into this folder. I'll add a new lab, SD WAN test lab. What do I need over here, guys? This is my diagram. What do I need over here right now for today? I need a vManage, vSmart, vBond, and a server. Right? I'll put a switch on the inside and a switch on the outside so that they can communicate to each other. Agreed? Yeah? So let's do that. Actually, let's just also get this going. We'll also set up a vEdge over here. One vEdge. So this is a blank topology. I'll add a vManage. My vManage I'm running is 19.2.1. There you go. I'll add another node, vBond. Again, 19.2.1. By the way, when you're doing this, the vBond and vEdge images are the same. And then you have your vSmart. Again, 19.2. Have that. I need a server. The server that I'm using over here is a basic Windows 2008 server, but I'm putting 2 interfaces on it. The reason I need 2 interfaces over here is because of my topology. If you take a look at my topology over here, I have 1 interface on the management network, 1 on the outside network. The reason I need the outside network is because of the CS server I need to deploy to the other devices. Yes, you can. As long as you have the images, you have access to the images and the SmartNet portal, you can do the entire lab on your laptop. I'm doing this on my laptop. What I'm showing you guys right now is on my laptop. Good so far, guys? So added these 4 devices. I needed to do what? Let me go back over here. I need to make sure that I've done that. I need to put 2 interfaces because of the inside outside, and management I'm going to do through through RDP, and the user and password I'll put in so I can log in. Images, no, man. Again, guys, please do not ask for images or licenses. The licenses are against my name. I cannot share that. I'll show you how to do it, but you need to get the licenses. I'll give you the UNL file as well, the topology, but the images you need to get. You need to contact your local Cisco partner for that. Good. So now what I'll also do is I'll add actually a router. The reason I'll do that is because I want to connect that vEdge over here as well. I'll say router 1, normal layer 3 router. I'll also add a VH 19.2.1, and I'll add another router which will act as, I'm not going to use it but today, but I'll add it anyways. Router, let's say site 1. VEdge, and then behind VEdge is the internal router inside my data center. Now I need 2 switches to connect. So I'll add 2 switches over here. 1 switch over here and 1 switch for the internal network. You guys following along in terms of what I'm doing? I'm setting that topology for my main site. Good. Now this is a switch. It's going to put all these 4 devices on the same network. What I'm going to do is I'm going to take Ethernet 0 for vManage and put it on the Ethernet 0 on vManage on the inside switch. Do the same thing for what? vBond, Ethernet 0. Same thing for vSmart, Ethernet 0. And the first device or first interface, which is E0 from the Windows server. Any device, any routing would be fine. Any router, layer 3 device. I can even put a layer 3 switch over there. Just a normal layer 3 router. I'm doing basic routing on it, so it doesn't really matter. Now, similarly, 19.2.1, yeah. So similarly on the vManage, the outside interface, this is going to be my transport interface to the outside network, Ethernet 1. My vBond outside interface is not going to be Ethernet 1, it's a gig interface, gig 01, gig 00, sorry. And vSmart, again, Ethernet 1. And the second device, second interface of mine, Win server. Connect it up. Connect that to one of the interfaces of the router. Connect the router to the vEdge. On the vEdge, I'm going to go to the outside interface. R1 is the HQ router, yeah. This whole site right now, I'm just setting the headquarter site. So this entire site, my main objective is to show you the bring up process of your vManage, vBond, vSmart, and my vEdge. Got it? So I'm only doing one site today just so you guys get a feel of it. I don't want to do too much theory on the same day. So the next thing, again, I'm not going to use ETH0. ETH0 generally I'm going to use for VPN 512. This is on the vEdge, don't forget. So I'm going to do this as gig 01, for example. So take a look. On vEdge, I have gig 00 and gig 01. There is an ETH0. I'm not going to be planning on using ETH0 at all. This is my VPN 512. Yeah? Everybody okay with that? Understood this? I'm going to bring up my vManage. I'm going to bring up my the Win server. Let them boot up because these are heavy devices. I'll bring the other devices as I'm configuring those. This one itself, I believe, takes about 16 gigs of memory. So you need a powerful device to run this. And if you want to make it pretty, you can change this. I do. There's tons of things that you can do with it. I'll edit this guy. I would say 64 is what I would recommend. 48 will do. 32, it'll be slow. It'll work, but it'll be slow. Because you have the Windows server as well for the cert server. I am using the Pro version. but I do have friends that have gotten it working on the community as well, so it does work on the community as well. Anyone over here done community? What specs are you using? I have 128 gigs of memory on my laptop. It is a Lenovo, I don't know, one P52 or something like that, but I customized it. Lenovo, is it ThinkPad? I don't know. How do you check? I'm not too much into this PC stuff. There's a sysconfig or something. This thing. ThinkPad, yeah, P52. P52. This thing over here. And it's got 128 gigs memory. All right, this is done on this side. Let's change this one. While it comes up, it takes time to come up, so that's why I'm killing time for right now. Two more and I'm done. I can check the status on it. Give me a second. I think 4. I might have to go into edit to do that. That should be good enough, Tuan. All right, this is good enough for right now. Let's go to the vManage. The first thing that I need to do on the vManage is click on it. It will console me into the device. I don't need these. These are the old ones. The default username and password is admin. Again, these things I will give you in a lab format so you can focus on that. It'll prompt you for a username password change or password change. I'll just set it back to admin. Keep it simple. Now, this is important. It will format your device based on to format a hard drive that is given to you guys over here. So you can do that. So it's going to take some time for it to come up. So while it's doing its thing, it dedicates a hard drive for the VM over here. While it's doing its thing, I can RDP into my server. What are the different things that I need to do on the server? This is something that you need to be careful about. The first thing that you need to do on the server is set the time. Extremely, extremely important. Why? Because I'm going to set this up as a certificate server. Certificates that you're doing are time and date based. If your time on the server is not correct, from that point on, everything else needs to jive with the server. All right? So for example, right now, based on my time zone, I'll change it. Not this time zone. I'm going to set it to the Dubai time zone, which is +4. And I am going to change the time to match it, which is going to put me at, right now, should be what? 11:09. All right, PM. Be careful with this, guys. So it's 11:10 PM on the 27th. March, April. It's the 27th, 11:10 PM. You could set up an NTP server to do that, but I just need to get it up and running quick. So 11:10 PM, change the time. This is the time and date, done. So the first thing that I did on my server is set up my time. Once that's done, I need to add the role. I want to make this into a certificate server. The way you do that, you go to roles, It's under the server manager. Open the server manager up, go to roles, add the role. And if you take a look at it, the top option is the Active Directory certificate services. That's the service that you need to install. Click next. Next, you also need to install the certificate of authority web enrollment that allows you the ability to enroll your certificate requests, CSRs over here through the web browser. It'll say, hey, listen, you need the web servers to do that. I'll say, no problems, add it. Click next. It's a standalone server. It's a root CA server. Create a new private key. Take the defaults for that. No problems. I'll call this. You can call it whatever you want. I'll call it the KBit CA. It doesn't matter what you call it. 5-year validity is good enough. I don't plan on running this for 5 years. Next, next, and install. Understood, guys? So you guys understand what I did over here? All I did was set my date and time. And once I set the date and time over here, the next thing that I did over here was install my certificate server. Good. While it's doing its thing, let's check our status on my vManager. It looks like it's up. Let's try to log in. System initializing, please wait to log in. That's okay. This is doing its thing over here. You guys following along in terms of setting this up? And what I'm doing today for you guys, Windows 2008. It doesn't matter as long as you can run a certificate server on it. That's all I'm doing on this. I'm just setting this part for you guys today. One step at a time. And then I'm going to do this. That's tomorrow. Now let's check. Still initializing. Once it's done, it'll give you a message over here. The system is ready. Let's check our this one was done. Okay, this is the old one that I was using. It's still installing the web services. That's okay. This one is not done yet because if it does finish, it'll give you a message saying, hey, listen, you can log in. Give it a minute. See that? System ready? So you need to be a little patient with it for it to come up. So now this is done. I can do admin, login. So you're on your vManage. First thing, show run. Just like you do on a normal router, show run. The main things that I want to do is some system configuration. System configuration, identify this particular device, the vManage. All right. There are 6 required parameters that you need to put in on vManage on the system side of things. I'll mention that. I'll show you those. Okay. Once you're done with the system part of it that identifies the vManage, you'll have things like the time zone. It'll have the VBON IP address, its name, its router ID, which is called the system ID over here, things like that. All those things are going to be over there. Got it? Once that's done, the next thing that you need to see over here are the 2 VPNs. You guys see the 2 VPNs over here? VPN 0 and VPN 512. You guys remember this? What are these 2 VPNs? These are the management and the control, which is called the transport VPN. Got it? So how do I configure it? As I said, you need to configure 2 things over here. One is your system identifiers. And the other thing that you need to configure over here is what? The VPNs. Everybody okay with that? How do I do that? It's very iOS-like. First thing, config T, you can even say con, it's good enough. Enters the configuration mode. Now, over here, what they've done in Viptela, they've broken it down into sub-config modes. So, for example, my system identifiers, everything goes under system. As I said, there's 6 parameters that I need to define over here. Just remember in your mind that you need to define 6 required parameters for this device. What are those? First one is host name. We'll call it vManage. Done. Second is your organization name, which is important. Why is it important? Remember the WAN edge list that I talked about? Which is generated on your PNP portal. It is done based on an organizational name. Remember that? Org name. When I go to validate my WAN edge devices, they need to match this. One of the fields that it matches is the name of the company, the org name. So you need to match this name against the PNP portal name for your organization. Good? Everybody okay with this? These two for right now? Site ID, identifying the site that I'm in. I'll say site 1 for right now. The time zone. The time zone is in this format. The continent followed by the city. So find that for you guys. Mine is Asia, and I'm going to pick Muscat. Muscat has the +4. So how many have I done so far? I've done the name, the site ID, I've done the org ID, I've set the clock. 4, right? I have 2 more. The other 2, very important. You guys remember how in OSPF you have a router ID? Is a router ID used for reachability, or is it to identify a router? It is to identify the router uniquely. No, it's not for reachability. You don't use it for the transport. It's just to identify. All right. So it could be an address that is not reachable or not routable. Same thing over here. This is a router ID. It's not called a router ID. It's called the system IP. Okay. So I'm going to call this system IP. Let's say 10.1.1.101. I'm not routing 10.1.1.1.1. It does not exist in my network, but it's just a system ID. You get my point, guys? It's just like a router ID in OSPF or BGP. Just a number. But it's an important number because just like OSPF, your entire LSA database is based on that router ID. When you look at all the routes that are propagating, all the LSAs that are propagating in OSPF from a particular router, they're propagated based on the router ID of the router, not based on any IP address on the router. Similarly, when you identify, when you point to the vManage, you point to the system IP of vManage. Although it's not routable, it's identifier. Good so far? And the last one is the VBON address. In my case, I'm going to set the VBON address to be 199.113. Understood, guys? So what are the 6 parameters? And I've done that for you guys. Don't worry about writing this down. I have done and I'm going to be putting it in a better format and giving it to you guys. The configuration of the HQ router, I'll share this with you guys tomorrow. MPLS cloud configuration. This is just the WAN setup, installing the enterprise certificate server, all the steps. Configuring the time, configuring the interfaces, and all that. Oh, I had to do the interfaces as well on the server. We'll do that in a second. I need the WinSCP for tomorrow. I don't need it to, actually I do need it today because I'm going to set up the vEdge as well. Initializing the CLI, that's what I'm doing over here. Take a look. vManage, host name, system IP, site ID, organization name, clock time zone, and VBON address. IPs are on the same network as VM and Eve. It's on my internal network inside Eve. C edge is your CSR router, V edge is your VIPTEL VM. All right, you guys okay with this? Now the thing about this is, although I've done this, these configuration changes are not pushed yet. I need to commit for these changes to take effect. I'm not sure, Atul, about that. Matt, yes, it requires a specific WAN edge image. The one that I'm using is 16.12. You also need to be careful about making sure it's compatible with your controller. So the 16.12 CSR image is not compatible with your 18.4 controller. Got it? You understand that? So it's not just you have to have a specific image, it also needs to have compatibility with your controller. Take a look at the matrix for that. Have you tried 17.x with, no, I haven't. I've tried to do it simple, where everything is matching. All right, good. So I haven't committed yet. Let's go ahead and commit this. Now, to see this, show run system, and you'll notice that I have set the parameters based on that, like the vManage host name, system IP, site ID, organization name, clock name, time zone, all those type of things. Here, guys, everybody okay with this? Now, what's the other thing that I told you that we need to do? The VPNs. What is the configuration of my VPN right now? Show run VPN. Very similar to what you do in the iOS. You have 0, which has Ethernet 0. I need to set an IP address to that. What is the IP address that I need to set to it? Based on my topology. Do you guys remember what I said? Oh, I haven't done that yet. Here's my thingy over here. Let's set this internal network. The ETH0 network, the management network is 192.168.1.0, .1.3, because I'm now pointed to it as .3.2, and we'll set this as .5. Okay, let's do vManage first right now. So as .1, this one will be .1, and the VPN 512 will be this interface. It doesn't have an interface assigned to it. I'm going to set it up as Ethernet 1. So how do I do it? From global config, VPN 0, you go in there and you specify what interface you want to configure. Ethernet ETH 0, IP address 192.168.1.1/24 in this format. It doesn't use that 255.255 format. No shot. Now, if you want this to take effect, commit. Now I've done 512. Should it not be the other way around? Meaning, it is internal. What do you mean by internal? Oh, sorry. Yes, I'm sorry. VPN 0 is outside. So this is wrong. So what I need to do is no Ethernet ETH 0. Take it out. Okay. Take it out first and then commit this first. Let's do 512 first. Ethernet 512. Interface ETH 0. IP address 1.1/24. No shot. Commit. On the outside, which is VPN 0, I'm going to put ETH 1. IP address. I'm going to put this side, the outside, based on this diagram. So this I've configured as what? 192.168.1.0. I'm going to configure this as 199.110/28. So that gives me IP addresses 1 through 14. Okay. So let's do that over here. IP address 199.111/28. No shot. Now, this interface is a transport interface, which has to be a tunnel. So I'll say tunnel interface, enter. So tunnel interface makes it a transport VPN. So now I can communicate to the other devices using DTLS. over here, because I do want to be configuring devices, allow netconf. If I want SSH to be done from the outside, you can do that. And that's pretty much it that you need to do over here. Anything else, that's it. And now I can commit it. All this, again, I have specified for you guys in your lab. Take a look. So this is my VPN 0 interface is ETH1, 199.1.1.2.4, tunnel interface, tunnel services. Oh yeah, I need to set up a default gateway on the outside. Why? I need it to communicate to what? To the outside. So in my case, my outside is going to be my HQ router. I'm going to put .14 as the IP address, so he should point to him as a default gateway. Now that is done in the global VPN configuration, which is I've done VPN 0, VPN 0, IP route 0000/0, 199.1.1.14, commit. Now if I go down over here, take a look at my VPNs. I have VPN 0 ETH1 with this IP address. It is a tunnel interface that basically tells me it's a transport. I've done a no shut on the interface. This is my default gateway for VPN 0, and I have a 512 interface, which is 11. It's by default on. You should be. You don't need to specify. When I said all services, that includes ICMP. If you want to take it out, you can do that as well. Okay, done. So my vManage in terms of the configuration is done, and all of that configuration is over here. Take a look at it and tell me if you guys are okay with this. This is the entire config that I did for you guys. Good, everybody? Give me the go ahead, and I'll go ahead and set it up from my CLI now. All right, so this is done. Let's go to my server. It should be done now. What I'm going to do next is set my IP addresses over here, because I didn't get a chance to do it. Now, this is something that you need to be careful about on your EVE-NG server. The first server, the first interface, and the third interface are your interfaces. My first interface, E0, is this guy, and this is my E1. Don't configure this. This is the RDP server, the one that it uses for internal management. So over here, this is the inside server. I'm going to go in and configure it with an IP address of, this is the management network, 1.5. Click OK. And I'm configuring this as the outside interface, 199.1.1.5, 255.255.255.240. Default gateway 199.1.1.14. I'm not using a DNS server. Click OK, it's done. So if everything is fine, I should be able to ping my vManage from the inside and vManage from the outside. Understood, guys? So I have established my connection between my vManage and my management device. Now, one more thing that I need to do, I need to copy this over here, is this guy and kbits. I need WinSCP on this. So I'll put this over here on my downloads folder. I need some type of SCP application so that I can copy the root certificate down. Install. There you go. When you install it in, what do you call it? When I install the Windows Server in Eve, it uses the first interface for E0. It uses the second interface for what do you call it? For its RDP session, the RDP session that I'm making over here for the control session. So if you have a second interface, that would becomes the third interface. So this interface is E0, what you see on the diagram as E0. This interface over here is E1. This is your management interface. Got it, Zahir? So don't configure this. This is an internal address that they use. Now that I have connection to it, I can browse to it. What I'll do is I'll open up Chrome, browse to my vManage, the actual port number it uses, although it does do redirection. So if I did this, it would still work. It's all internal, all internal. Yeah, in this case, it's automatically bridged to my real card, automatically, yeah. So 8443 is the port number for vManage. I don't need to specify it, but the actual port number you need to understand is 8443. Even if you did 192.168.1.1, internally it would do the redirection and it'll put you into the server. But just for your information, maybe you're taking an exam, the actual management port number is 8443. No, luckily no. Haven't we had problems without enough over the years? Yeah, there's certain things that are better. It's faster, actually. Forget about buggy. It's really slow with Firefox. It's much faster over here. You guys good with this so far? You guys okay with getting it up? So this is my console for vManage. This is where you're going to live as an SD-WAN administrator. All right. At this point, it's showing me that my vManage is up. But I do need to do certain things inside vManage as soon as I get in there. Number one, I need to, in the graphical, point and create certain things that I've already done as part of my, my CLI. I still need to do it inside my graphical. I go to the administration menu, which is this guy, these two guys. Settings. So administration, settings. Let me write this down because I do need to create a lab for this. So I'll create a new. So I'll write this down for you guys as well. So step one, go to the administration, settings menu. In there, first thing that I need to do is set the organization name. Again. All right, so something graphically, it requires you to do the same thing again. So this is right at the top. When you went into administration settings, first thing that I need to do is set the org name. Edit, says not configured. Kbits. Yeah, but it's still required from the command line. This and the vBond. The rest is done. So this is done twice. One inside the CLI and one inside the configuration over here as well. Kbits. Save. And then the vBond address. Edit. This is the default port for vBond, 12346. In my case, my vBond address is 199.113, which will be 199.113. So what are the two things that I do over here? Organization name, kbits, vBond. Good so far, guys? 2 steps done. Now, the next thing that I need to do is very important. What did I tell you that I need to do? I need to use the enterprise device as what? The enterprise root CA server. I'm not using Cisco. I'm using my own root certificate, right? I need to install the root certificate and trust it. When I install it, I'll basically trust my root certificate for what? For this device. Remember my root, my certificate server is this device. I need to install that root certificate over here and trust it. By default, over here, if you take a look at it, it says controller certificate authorization set to Cisco. I want to edit this. Okay, Cisco, semantic, manual, or enterprise root. I want to use the root certificate. Well, that basically will tell you, okay, you're doing this. Tell me what is the root certificate. I need to put the root certificate over here. Where do I get that from? The root certificate, you can browse over here to your CA server, which after this, let me put this in over here as well. Step number 2, download the root certificate from your CA server. 199.113 is the VWAN IP. Yeah. How do I do it? http://192.168.1.5/cert SRV. It puts you into your cert server. Take a look. And one of the options over here is download the CA certificate. That's a root certificate. Step 2, download root certificate. Use the base 64. That's the one that is acceptable. And download CA certificate. It downloads it over here. Click download certificate. I just started it, so I will. All right. Once it's downloaded, what I generally do is go into the folder, because everything you download, it will have the same name, certnew.cr. Into the downloads folder and change the name to rootcert.cr. You can call it whatever you want. That's what I generally do that with that. So I'll go over here in my downloads thing, and I'll change the name over here called, again, not required, but the reason I do that is later on I'm going to be downloading different certificates. All of them will be saved as root, the same name with 1, 2, 3, 4. So it's better to give them a proper name, root cert. Now, once I've downloaded it, I need to open it up in Notepad. So I'll go to open Notepad over here. The reason I need to open it in Notepad because I need to paste it. So open, file, open, go to downloads. Does the CN need to match the organization name? Which CN? Over here? No, it doesn't. Not this one. This is the root certificate CN. That doesn't need to match. I'll change it just for the heck of it. So I need to open this root cert. This is the certificate over here. Control A, copy. I'll go back into my, how is this? I'll go back into my vManage. I had just opened up what? Let me just show you where I'm at. It's under controller certificate authorization. I changed it to enterprise root certificate. I'll write that down for you guys over here so you guys are all in sync with this. I've done this. Open the root cert.cr file using Notepad. Copy using Control A, Control C. Done. Go into vManage. again into what? Administration, settings, and over here I need to go into controller, certificate, authorization, change certificate signing this guy over here. You see this? To or by what? Enterprise. What is it? Enterprise server, I think. Root certificate. And this could be any company. You guys remember we had a discussion about that earlier on. What can you use? You can use any company you want, but the only ones that will show up over here are Cisco or Symantec. Anything else, it's enterprise root. So that at that point could be anything. I'm using Microsoft. You could use OpenSSL. You could use whatever, VeriSign, whatever you want, Entrust. So once this is done, paste the root certificate.cr. So what I have done over here is I have done a Control A, Control C, go over here and paste it. Done. Go down over here. Let me make sure one thing though. I didn't check the time. Show clock. I do want to make sure that the time is right. 23:42. That is good. 23:42. So over here, I pasted it, but I need to set the CSR configuration domain name. I'll call it kbits.local. Doesn't matter. Organizational unit is okay. Organization name, I'll call it Viptela, just for the heck of it. Name Dubai. This is the information about not my company. This is the root certificate, which doesn't necessarily need to be my company. It could be any company. AE, we'll do it for 3 years. Import and save. So what I basically have done at this point, guys, is I've installed what? I have installed the root certificate for my server, my CA server, into vManage. You get my point? Over here, set the CSR parameters. And save. Good so far? So I'm ready now to move on to the next step. And what is the next step? You need to understand, and this is something that we discussed earlier on as well. At this point, what certificate do I have on my vManage? I only have my root. What does vManage also need to have? It needs to have the ID cert, right? How do I do the ID cert for vManage so that the vManage can be authorized? Now that I've done this, I go to my configuration menu and you go to devices. So the next step over here, after I save this, step 5, generate a CSR, certificate service request for vManage. Where is it? You go to configuration, devices, and under devices, you go to controllers. Let me show you. So you go configuration, devices, and under devices, this is the WAN edge. I'll go to controllers. The only device that I have right now is vManage. This is the system IP. This is the site ID. I have no certificates installed. So I'll go over here on the 3 buttons over here. Actually, not over here. Sorry, not under devices. I need to do this under certificates. So we'll go to certificates, controllers. I have vManage, no certificate installed. Click on this and I will generate a CSR. This is the request where it will have all my information, my vManage name, my organization name, my serial number, everything will be over here. So this is the CSR that I will copy over here. Let me write this down for you guys so you have that in your notes. It's not under devices, it's under certificates, controllers, vManage, generate CSR. That generates my certificate, which has my identity. Now over here, once I generate the CSR, copy by using Control A and Control C. Now that I've done that, request a certificate from the CS server. How do I do this? And this is something that you would need to repeat. Not only for the vManage, you need to do the same thing for what? vSmart, vBond. So I would go back to my certificate server, go back to the same main option, which is the IP address /cert SRV, request a certificate, do an advanced request, and paste your service request. This is what I copied from there. Okay, so where do I do it? http:// in my case 1.1 cert SRV, request a certificate, advanced, paste the request. Based on whatever you copied over here, you do Control B. Got it? Everybody okay with that? So once this is done, submit. Now once I submit, it says certificate request has been received. However, you must wait for an administrator to issue the certificate. So what I would do over here, go into my, Active Directory. This is my CA server. Go to the pending requests. You can see the request over here. Issue it. Once it's issued, and I'll write that down for you guys because you would need to do it yourself. In real life, the certificate administrator would do that. Issue the certificate from the CA server. Number 8, once it's issued, go download the certificate from the CA server. Again, how do I do it? Go to the cert, don't request it. There's an option to check it. See over here, I'll go back to cert, view the status of a pending certificate, and you'll see that there's a certificate saved. Click on it, download it as base 64. All right, now it's again in the downloads folder. It's called Cert New again. I'm going to change the name to vManage. This is the identity certificate for vManage. All right, so request or check on pending request. Click the link to download. Change the name to vManage. All right, and then you would do the same thing over here that I did over here for this guy, which is this is mine. What is it called? vManage.cert file using Notepad, Control A, Control V. Let's do that. So this is the file I'll open with Notepad, open, Control A, Control C. Go down to vManage. Now once this is done, I'll close this. There's an option over here, install certificate. Do you see that? Click on it, paste it. Whatever you copied over there, paste it over here, install it. Now it's going to go to the schedule and install it. In the meantime, I'll complete this. Number 10, click on the install option at the top right corner and paste the certificate. Control. And what would happen is you would have a certificate generated. If I go and check again under certificates, controllers, now I have my vManage with the certificate serial number. Done? Everybody okay with this? Now it's up to you guys. Do you want to continue or you guys want to continue tomorrow? Root certificate, go back, check the lecture up front. I've explained that in detail. What the difference between a root and certificate is. Let me just do the controllers, guys. I don't want to leave it in the middle. Let me do the controller. And that's it. We'll stop at the controllers. Now it's repetitive. It's nothing new. Okay? So it won't take that long to do this. So if you take a look at it, what did I do over here to set this up? Let's just review this real quick. In order to bring my controller up, what did I have to do? Initialize it. In the initialization, I had system and I had the VPN configurations. Agreed? And once I did that, I went into the graphical. I reset the org name. I reset the VBON address, changed the certificate to enterprise. I'm just recapping it, right? Installed the root which is used to identify or basically authorize the other devices. And then I generated and installed what? The ID cert. Generated and installed ID cert. This is basically what I've done. And I need to do almost the same thing for what? vSmart and VBON. Are you ready? I'll have the notes. So let's start with the vSmart. How do I do that? vSmart, again, I have the notes already for you guys, so I don't need to worry about that. Initializing, we'll do the VBON because that's a first one that you have. Again, same things that I did. System and then the VPN part. All right? What do I need to do with the system? Oh boy, I need to bring it up. What do I need to do with the system, guys? What would I need to do? Let's recap that also while it's coming up. What are the different things that I need to set up over here? Under the system, 6 parameters. Host name, system IP, site ID, org name, clock, important, and VBON. These 6 parameters. Everybody okay with this? And what about the VPN? We're doing VBON, ETH0 for what? VPN 512, and VPN 0 in this case is gig 0/0. All right, this will be tunnel. The VBON needs to do the setup based on IPsec because it's going to do the IPsec configurations over there. So your encapsulation needs to be IPsec over there. Other than that, it's pretty much the same thing that you do on the other tunnels. So what I'll do is, rather than doing it when it comes up, Take a look at this. Tell me if you guys are okay with this. Under the VBond system, what did I do? Host name, VBond, system IP 10.1.1.103, site ID 1, organization name, clock time zone, clock VBond. Now, how do I say it's a VBond? Now, you need to understand that the same image that you use for your vEdge, it's the same image that you use for your VBond. It's the same image. This is what makes it into a special vEdge. It points to itself as a device. If they're on the same site, you put the same site ID. In my case, I put them all on the same site. So site is basically a location. And I can use that as a classifier later on. You'll take a look at it when we do the policies. I can use a site identifier as a way to identify devices from a particular site. You guys okay with this setup? Yeah, this is how you make your local site. If I want redundancy, again, you can have multiples of those. You can have multiple vSmart devices. You can have multiple VBonds. And then again, when you go into your organization inside the smart controller, you would create two controller profiles where you would specify two different VBond addresses for the same org, giving yourself redundancy. Otherwise, you have a single point of failure. All right, let's see if it's up. So VBond, let's see. It looks like it's up. Set the initial password. And now what I'm going to do is, rather than waiting, I just copy paste this. VBond 10.1.1.103, 1 kbits Asia / Muscat 199.113. Local is what makes it a VBond. Otherwise, I want you guys to see this, and don't panic when you see that. It comes up as a vEdge. It's absolutely okay. Commit successful. Now I'll do my VPNs, two VPNs, VPN 0. I'm going to make sure sometimes what they do is they put Ethernet 0 as VPN 0. I'll take it out. Instead, configure gig 0/0 as my VPN 0 interface, set the IP address, tunnel interface, IP route 199.1.1.14, VPN on the inside. Same exact thing. The two interfaces that I configured for what? For your vManage, I'm doing the same two configuration interfaces for VBond, outside and the inside, the management as well as the outside. So once this is done, I can go back into my VBond and configure it. Oh, tunnel encapsulation. I forgot. Remember, I told you that, but I forgot to set it up. So if I go under interface gig, no, I'm in the wrong VPN. VPN 0, interface gig E 0/0, tunnel interface encapsulation is IPsec. Did that. Let's do it again. Let me do it manually. Show run. What do I have? VPN 0 is ETH0 and VPN. So VPN 512. Let's finish this off first. ETH0. IP address is 192.168.1.2 or 3, sorry, /24. No shut commit. So VPN 512 is done. VPN 0. Interface is gig 0/0. IP address 199.113/28. No shut. Tunnel interface encapsulation IPsec. Allow services all. Allow service netconf. Allow service SSD. And I am done. I do need to do one more thing over here. No, this is good enough for here. It automatically does that for you. You don't need to worry about doing it. It's automatically done. So 199.1.1.14. I don't need to do it. I was just doing it. Initially, when I was doing it, I was doing other things over here, like when SEC uploading the certificates. That's why I did it. So I got into a habit of doing it. But normally, you don't need. You need netconf, and that's pretty much it. And the encapsulation IPsec. You mean habit? Yeah, you'll get it right one of these days. All right, so let's do that now. Ping 199.111 on the outside. I should be able to ping it. And by the way, it doesn't, when you do a ping over here, it doesn't do like 4 pings or 5 pings. It's unlimited. So if you want to limit it, you need to use the count feature. So 2 pings. Otherwise, it's unlimited. Or I can do now. By default, that's another thing that I want you guys to understand. When you do a normal ping, it uses VPN 0 for it. So when I'm doing ping 199.111, which is on VPN 0, it's going to work. But if I try to do 192.168, it will not work. And this is a different VPN. The default VPN is a transport VPN. See? Ping in VPN 0. So if you want this to work, ping VPN 512.192.168.1.1. We'll do a count of 2. Don't forget the do. So now it's communicating. My initial setup is done. Right? Everybody okay with this? How do I register them? Let's take a look. This is the registration process now. This I'm going to write for you guys. Okay, I will go over here. The first thing that I need to do is I need to add the controller as a device. Which controller? The vBond. So this you do under configuration, devices, go to controllers. Right now you only see one controller, which is the vManage. Add the controller. Which one? vBond. Now this is where it authenticates. When I add the controller, it'll say, what is the address? And what is the management username password so that I can authenticate it? You get my point. So this is where I'm going into vBond and logging in as the administrator. So it's a trust factor over here. And it's going to generate my CSR because I know I need to get a certificate generated. So rather than going and generating later on, I'm generating it off the bat. So I don't need to now generate a CSR. I just need to see it. So this is going to generate all my identity configuration for me so I can get the certificate installed. So click on add. So my vBond is over here. Let's write this down. What did I do? So this is your vBond now. The CLI portion I have written down. I just need to do the graphical one. So step 1, in vManage, you need to go where? Configuration, devices, add for devices controllers, add controller, vBond, IP address 199.1.1.3, username, admin, password, admin, check, generate, CSR. Done? Step 2. Now that I've generated the CSR, I need to find my certificate, copy, paste it. So this part over here. This part remains the same. So I'll copy it and make some changes to it. So 1 was done. This is number 2. Or this is number 2. Configuration, certificate controller, vBond, not generate, view CSR. Why? I've already generated as part of the type when I added it. So let's take a look now. Configuration, certificates, controllers. I should have vBond, no certificate, but the CSR has been generated. I can click on it. View CSR. Control A, Control C. Got it? Once I do that, again, go back over here. Go back to the cert. Request a certificate, advanced, paste, submit. So it goes back into your Certificate server, go back over here, refresh it to see that certificate, issue it. And once you issue it, same exact thing. I'm just repeating the same stuff that I did for my vManage. It will be over here. View the status, save certificate over there, download it as base64. It'll be again cert new.cer, show in folder, change it. This is my vBond. Open it, copy. This is the cert for the vBond, the identity cert for vBond. Go back into vManage. I've done this. Install certificate. Paste it. Install. And should do it. While it's doing this thing, let's take a look. vBond. Control request a certificate. Paste it. Install the certificate from the CS server. Just 3, man. Just 3. We'll be done with it today. Download the certificate from the CS server. We've done all of that. Change it. Change the name to vBond. So now I'll open that vBond file, which I've done. Copy, paste it. Install option, paste it. So now, if you go back over here, success. How's it knows automatically? Because it's inside the, what do you call it? When you receive the certificate request, it knows, it matches it based on the name. Eventually, yeah, I think everything will be merged, but at this point, you need to do it. But this is one-time thing, Rama. Once the 3 controllers are up, you're done. Including the APIC mat. So now if I go to my devices, I have my 2 devices up and running, the 2 controllers. Yeah, in sync, installed. You get my point, guys. One last one. What is that? vSmart. But now you're smart. You know how to do it, right? So let's do that. Same exact proper, same type of configuration. I have my vSmart up. I open it up. Log in. Admin. Admin is the default. Ask you to change the password. I'll change it back to admin. Config T. I do have a config for this. Just verify it. vSmart. Kbits, vSmart, system IP 10.11.102, site ID the same, everything else is the same, commit. So let's get the system going. This on the vSmart, the CLI portion, same exact thing. The VPN configuration, VPN 0, Ethernet 0, ETH1, 192.112 tunnel interface, and then the default gateway and ETH0 with the IP address. Should work. Looks good. Bingo. So now to verify the connectivity, ping 199.111 or 3, or if you want to do the VPN 512. 192.168.1.1 and 1.3. So everything is working properly. If you use Cisco as a CA server, you don't need to do these type of things. Yeah, this is specifically for on-prem. If you can do this, Cisco's one is much simpler than this, because this part will be done for you guys. Understood, guys? I'm trying to build it up so that you know exactly, there's no gaps in your knowledge. So that's why I'm doing it a little slow, but at the same time, making sure everybody's on the same page. All right, so this is done. What do I need to do next? You guys help me out now. You know what I did for vBond? Before the CSRs are here, I need to do what? Before the CSR, I need to add. Right? The first thing that I need to do is add the controller. So go again, configuration, devices, controllers, add the controller. Now this time around, I'm adding the vSmart 199.112. Username is the same. This is where you specify whether you want to do DTLS or TLS. Recommended to do DTLS. Generate the CSR. Your vSmart is over there. Now I need to do what? View the CSR so I can register. Where do I go, guys? You guys help me out now. Should be simple at this point. I've done it twice. Config, certificates, controller, vSmart, CSR is generated at the time of adding it. View, CSR, Control A, Control C, go to your certificate server. Last one. We're done with this. So request, add, paste. Bingo. Okay. Time. My time over here changed for some reason. It should be full, should be what? 1:12 a.m. on 28th. Good old Windows. Now what I need to do for this to work properly, I need to regenerate because it's done based on the wrong time. Generate CSR. Okay. Control A, Control C. Let's try it one more time. Request, advanced, submit. Okay, it's good. See how important that time was? Remember I told you up front, set the time properly. Done. Go back. Download it as base 64. Show folder, change the name. Open it. These are same steps. So I'll just copy paste the steps. Control A, Control C. You can close this. Go over here. Go to install certificate. Paste it. And let's check this now, our last one. vSmart. IP address is 2. Admin. Request a certificate. This is vSmart. Because the steps are exactly the same. Done. Okay, it's got that time issue. But you guys get the gist, right? It'll be valid next day. It would have worked if the server didn't change the time on me. I'm not sure, Frank, to be honest with you. Nobody knows because it's a brand new exam. Just went valid today. Good. You guys understand what the problem is over here because of that change of the date. So it's comped off on that. Now, we will do this again actually. Tomorrow I'm going to set it up on the main one. Time zone on vSmart should be okay because vSmart is smart. The issue is on that server. Oh, that's probably why. That's probably why. But it'll be good in a bit. Now, one last thing before we go, and the last thing, promise, is this is done. Now, remember what I told you that when I go onto my PNP portal, I have that Vantage device or Vantage list. I've done that already. I've downloaded the .viptela file. What I'll do now is I'll go over here under my devices. Notice over here, my Vantage list is completely blank. Now, there's two different ways of getting this. Number one is Sync Smart account, which would need my device to have internet access. I'm inside EVNG, so I don't have access to it. So the manual way of doing it is doing the upload of the Vantage list. That would be the .viptela file that you would have downloaded from where? From the Smart account. Choose the file. I've downloaded and copied into your downloads folder. It's called kbits.viptela. Open it. Validate. Basically validated the updated list and send it to the controllers. Upload. We have that as part of our IO, part of our, what do you call it, data center class. This is where you need the licenses. So now number of VHs are uploaded successfully is 14. That's the one that I have gotten from Cisco. So as soon as I do that, it pushes that to your vBON and your vManage over here. Now you can check them. If you go back to your devices, I should see 14 devices over here. And notice because all of those devices are not physical devices, they're what? They're logical devices. They come with a virtual chassis number and the one-time password, the token. So once I register my devices, this token would change to what? A serial number. So this is your OTP that I'll use to register my VH device. I'll show you that tomorrow. Good, everybody? No, org ID needs to match, but then again, the chassis number, the serial number is what you put on the VH to validate, to activate. So yes, the org ID is the only one that you really need to have from whatever you're doing. But then when you go to the VH, you need to match it based on this, the chassis number, the serial number, the OTP. So tomorrow, what we'll start with now is the fun part now. It won't work without the, adding the Vantage device or doing what? Smart Sync. That's just a device ID. You don't really need to match it. That's on the physical devices, Matt. The PID is on the physical devices. For the VH cloud, you don't need that. So if you have a physical device, then it would have a PID on that. Product ID, basically. Oh, for this one is the VH cloud, and you don't need any other thing, just the VH cloud. That's the one, VH cloud DNA. That's the one that you need when you're adding it. You guys good with this, guys? Again, everything will be stepwise like this, so you will understand this. By the end of it, you will be able to configure this. My promise to you guys, step by step. But again, you need to take it slow. This is the end result that you're going to do by the end of the class. You need to take it slow in the sense of what? One step at a time. So once the controllers are registered, the next thing would be to register the, what do you call it? The edges. And once the edges are done, then I'll show you the power of templates. There you guys. Mohammed, for this class, I'm going to do the recording in about a month because I want to make sure that these classes are not shared. I had a lot of people share my classes recently. I had a student come and say, hey, listen, I'm telling you up front, I'm going to share your videos for the SD-WAN class. So unfortunately, but people think I'm not getting, I can show you the email. It's okay to share with the friends. I'll not share it on the internet, but if a friend asks me, I have to share it with them. And I put so much work into it. We'll do that, Cedric. We'll talk about the other stuff that we can do as well. No, man, it's okay. I will give you all the steps written down. Yes, sir. We're done for the day. Too much on my plate, man. Absolutely. I'll send it to you tomorrow morning, right? All this.